A thought from an unseen observer drifts over a grand ducal mansion, remarking how nice it must be to have a powerful duke's backing. The spiteful thought continues, questioning who would marry a half-breed bastard without such powerful support. A maid with her brown hair and a neat bun announces she has brought the requested hot water to a lady in a gray dress. When the blonde lady doesn't respond, the maid repeats herself, while the blonde woman seems to be thinking about offering to fix her own makeup. The blonde woman declines the offer, and a maid insists she drink the warm water that was so difficult to procure. Kia. A hand suddenly splashes into the water with a startled scream. The blonde woman stands silently after knocking over the basin, while one maid leaps back, exclaiming she was almost burned, and another thinks she should have been more careful. The blonde woman calmly asks for a mirror, as someone unseen internally mocks her vanity on a wedding day she supposedly hated. She reaches for a small, square object, resting on a golden vanity. The blonde woman, wearing a delicate wedding dress, reaches out as if touching her own reflection. A sharp pain hits her as she clutches her head, wondering what is happening. As her maids remind her the ceremony is about to start, the blonde woman thinks about the absence of swords and blood, confusing them. Her confusion gives way to a radiant, tearful smile of pure joy. Her expression shifts to a confident, knowing look, which seems to unnerve her brown-haired maid. The maids whisper anxiously about the sudden arrival of the Duke and whether they should obey the commands of an illegitimate child. A man with a goatee and a sharp suit enters the room, calling out the name, Roseanne. The man stands before Roseanne and her two bowing maids, asking if she was crying. He points out her smudged makeup and urges her to fix it before the wedding, but Roseanne seems internally confused by his touch. Roseanne stares intently at the man's hand as he holds her chin. The man looks perplexed by her strange reaction, thinking to himself, "What?" Roseanne calmly informs the man that they'll have to change the day's schedule, leaving him to wonder what she means. She faces him with a confident and serene smile, completely in control. A fiery flashback reveals a hero known as the Empire's faithful protector, the Dog of Beloise. A red-haired warrior with a scarred face reflects on a hollow existence, fated to return to darkness after a lifetime of endless war. The red-haired warrior, lamenting being sealed again, wishes to break the cycle and feel the simple freedom of wind in their hair. Resigned, they accept that such freedom is now an unattainable dream as they are consumed by light. Roseanne is suddenly jolted from the vision, her eyes wide with shock. She sits alone, marveling at the peaceful room, finding it strange that her seal was broken in a place without screams or the stench of blood. She recalls awakening in Roseanne's body, and being overwhelmed by the former owner's painful memories. The narrator explains that Roseanne Lalatin was the Duke's unfortunate and unloved illegitimate daughter, abandoned by her commoner mother. Desperate for her father's affection, Roseanne chose a political marriage, a path to ruin that the Duke knowingly allowed her to walk. The last memory of Roseanne's body was collapsing on a cliffside, struggling to breathe. The narrator wonders if the original Roseanne's soul had completely crumbled from despair. Now in control, the new Roseanne looks at the Duke with cold disdain, thinking the original was a fool to hope for love from him. Roseanne declares the wedding is canceled, bluntly stating that her intended fiancé is a pervert she refuses to marry. She asserts that she will handle explaining the cancellation to the young Marquis herself, taking charge of the situation. The Duke, enraged by her defiance, grabs her arm and shouts her name. "Ah!" Roseanne cries out from an unexpectedly sharp pain, wondering why it hurts so much, while the Duke dismisses her reaction as overly dramatic. She calmly tells him to let go of her hand, but he snaps back, accusing her of acting arrogant. In a brief, comical fantasy, the Duke appears utterly bewildered by her behavior. The mood darkens as Roseanne confronts him, accusing him of being the one who truly pushed her toward her demise. With her eyes glowing an intense blue, she warns the Duke that pushing someone to their death is still murder, and to never use her for his schemes again. She coolly suggests that if a marriage must happen, the still youthful Duke should be the one to do it, causing him to erupt in fury. He releases her arm, still believing she is making a fuss over nothing. As Roseanne walks away, she thinks that the sharp-minded Duke has surely understood her message by now. She pauses in the doorway, giving one last thoughtful look back into the room. Roseanne reflects on her past life, realizing she never knew the Duke had an illegitimate child, concluding this all must have happened after she was sealed away. Walking down the hall, she notes her new body's weakness, feeling pain from the hot water and the Duke's grip, a stark contrast to her former life. She stops by a sunlit window filled with beautiful flowers, a sudden realization dawning on her. Her thought trails off as she gazes at the flowers, simply taking in the world. Gazing at the flowers, she is struck by the simple beauty of the world she now inhabits. Dressed in her wedding gown, Roseanne makes a quiet, heartfelt vow to love someone from now on. She tries to calm her overwhelming emotions, chiding herself for crying over every beautiful thing she sees. Setting her feelings aside, she reaffirms that her most urgent priority is canceling the wedding. The scene shifts to a grand wedding hall, where musicians play for a crowd of elegantly dressed guests. Two noblewomen gossip about the shabby decorations, noting the lack of fresh flowers for a duke's daughter. A brown-haired woman remarks that the political alliance is what's truly important, and the guests are only there to curry favor with the duke. As Roseanne enters the hall, the guests murmur amongst themselves, commenting on her tear-streaked face and uncultured appearance. Ignoring the whispers, Roseanne is genuinely moved by the beautiful music and the starry jewels on the chandelier. She observes the happy guests, noting that while the original Roseanne's memories painted them as hostile, they seem to be here to congratulate her today. She decides she's glad she came to see everyone and plans to express her gratitude, even though she's canceling the wedding. Overwhelmed by the beautiful reception, she vows to remember this moment forever. Her strange declaration puzzles the nearby guests, who wonder if the pressure of the wedding has made her lose her mind. Facing the crowd, Roseanne calmly announces her firm decision not to go through with the marriage. Her expression is serene and resolute, her blue eyes filled with conviction. The beautiful, sunlit wedding hall stands as a silent witness to her shocking announcement. The guests erupt in confused whispers, trying to process what she just said about the marriage not happening. An older nobleman with a prominent white mustache approaches her with a look of concern. He reminds her that this wedding is for the duke's sake, but she simply asks, "The duke?" Flustered, the man confirms the duke knows of her plans and says he'll go to him at once. Roseanne coolly informs him that since the duke already knows, there's no problem. She will do as she wishes at her own wedding. Surrounded by an aura of purple flowers, her gaze is unwavering and confident. The older nobleman is aghast, concluding that she must have truly gone mad. Roseanne internally observes that the duke's power seems to have diminished significantly over the last 10 years. She walks through the hall, reflecting that while everything else changes, she alone seems to stay in place. Taking a deep breath, she dismisses her sentimental thoughts to focus on the task at hand. She walks across the polished floor, beginning to assess her current situation and abilities. She confirms that she can sense the young Marquis's presence, and realizes she can distinguish people the original Roseanne met before. Noting the accuracy of this new sense, she sees a man in tall black boots striding towards her. A man with brown hair and a formal suit stops before her, questioning her presence with a simple, "Roseanne?" The man, her fiancé, strikes a theatrical pose and asks if she missed him, but she thinks he's even uglier than her memory suggested. She bluntly informs the young Marquis that the wedding is canceled because she won't marry a pervert, stunning him into silence. When he calls her by name, she corrects him, insisting he should show respect to his partner and call her lady. He becomes furious, demanding to know what she's doing after so many people gathered to celebrate them. As he calls her hopeless, she calmly states that breaking an engagement is better than getting a divorce, leaving him speechless. The young Marquis confronts her, his face contorted with rage. He leans in menacingly, attempting to intimidate her by asking what Duke Laylatin will think of her actions. Unfazed, Roseanne gives a comically literal answer. "He'll think I'm a lady." The two glare at each other, both thinking the other is being impossibly difficult to understand. She lectures him again on calling her lady, suggesting he needs a proper education before considering marriage. He snarls a warning not to do something she'll regret, but she coolly tells him to understand his own position, as he doesn't suit her. The young Marquis's eye twitches with fury at her blatant dismissal. "Ah," he snaps, grabbing her arm and shouting that he definitely warned her. He raises his fist to strike her, screaming his warning one last time. She thinks he's a violent pervert, oddly comparing his fist to fluffy cloud bread. Knowing this body is weak, she decides to simply dodge the incoming punch. Suddenly, a man with black hair and a stern expression catches the Marquis's fist, stating that violence against a lady is too much. The mysterious man's sharp, red eyes gleam with intensity as he holds the punch at bay. Now positioned protectively in front of Roseanne, the man wonders about her eyes, which shine like jewels. He glances at Roseanne, noting she seems unhurt, and is captivated by the gem-like brilliance of her eyes. She comically wonders if seeing the handsome man's face after the ugly Marquis has warped her perception. Roseanne watches the disgraced Marquis bow, thinking that, even without having met, she should be able to sense a person's presence. The mysterious black-haired man stands stoically, his sharp red eyes exuding an intense and captivating aura. He scolds the young Marquis, calling him trash for daring to assault a bride on her wedding day. The Marquis asks the man, "Your Grace, how did you—" And he explains that Marquis Cecilia invited him. The man, now identified as a duke, asks the Marquis if he's intruding, to which the flustered Marquis quickly denies it. The Duke reveals that His Majesty sent him to a battlefield to die, and questions if it's strange that he's still alive. The Marquis nervously calls it a misunderstanding, but the Duke coldly reminds him that Roseanne is the only daughter of the loyal Lilaton family. A menacing shadow of the Duke looms over the terrified Marquis as he calls his actions against such a lady unthinkable. He warns the Marquis about the consequences he'll face if a certain person learns what he tried to do. The Marquis desperately insists he had no such intention, and the Duke sarcastically pretends to accept his excuse. The Duke announces he will inform His Majesty that the wedding is cancelled, prompting the humiliated Marquis to quickly excuse himself. Clatter. The young Marquis flees down the hall as Roseanne and the Duke watch him go. The Duke turns to Roseanne with a smile, telling her that she doesn't need to thank him. He playfully asks if she's speaking on his behalf, but she earnestly clarifies that she is simply saying what she means. She explains that had the marriage proceeded, the Emperor's power would have grown. Continuing her analysis, she states this would have been bad for him, so there is no reason for him to thank her. Utterly perplexed by her logic, the Duke can only echo her words. What I mean, his red eyes narrow slightly as he studies her, calling her Your Grace. An attendant interrupts, announcing that His Majesty summons the Duke. The Duke smirks grimly, guessing the Emperor had hoped his nephew's daughter would be killed, and will be disappointed to see him return unharmed. He kisses Roseanne's hand, thanking her and remarking on her unique way of speaking before he departs. Standing alone by a sunlit window, Roseanne muses that the Emperor seems to be the same as ever. Flap. A bluebird takes flight from the windowsill, soaring into the light. Elsewhere, in a dark library, an unseen figure roars in frustration, demanding to know where someone has gone. An enraged, long-haired Emperor demands to know who dares covet his hero, a gift meant to be bestowed upon the Empire as a vision of Roseanne glows with a golden, regal light. Back in the present, Roseanne sits at a garden table, finding it strange that all her power remains intact. She credits her retained abilities to the divine protection and blessing placed upon the hero's soul. However, she realizes this is a problem, as it means the sealing spell on her soul is also still active, making her feel stifled. Raising her hand in a quiet vow, she resolves to act carefully to keep her true identity a secret. A determined light shines in her brilliant blue eyes as she focuses on the future. With a determined expression, she admits to herself that she knows far too little about her current situation. She reflects on the only thing she knows about her past. Abandoned for her power, she joined a war to survive, was noticed by the Emperor, and then sealed. A fiery flashback shows a lone hero facing a colossal mad dragon, a battle that occurred 10 years ago. Roseanne approaches a butler to ask for the Duke, but he reminds her that she must call him father. Ignoring the butler's correction, she coolly requests he bring her father, deciding she will ask her question first. As the butler tries to stop her, the Duke's voice grants her entry, which she relays before the butler reluctantly agrees. Roseanne enters a grand room and formally addresses the Duke, correcting herself from Duke to father. Her father, sitting in bed with documents, acknowledges her arrival. She immediately notices his bandaged hand and asks if he was injured. The butler explains the Duke had a small accident on her wedding day, which seems to surprise Roseanne. She thinks his injured hand looks familiar, like one she shook before, prompting the Duke to clear his throat. Impatiently, the Duke tells her to ask her question quickly and then leave. Roseanne asks about the force that was assembled to seal the Mad Dragon 10 years ago, wanting to know their current whereabouts. The Duke expresses surprise at her interest, and she mentally urges him to stop the small talk. Seeing his reaction, she smiles hopefully, guessing that her old comrades must be doing well. Her hope is shattered as the Duke coldly informs her they're all dead. He amends his statement slightly, clarifying that one person did survive the ordeal. In shock, Roseanne processes his words while he confirms that, in battles like that, those sent to the front are meant to die. Stunned by the news of her comrades' deaths, Roseanne asks when and how it happened. The Duke questions her sudden curiosity, but she internally justifies it as studying the Empire's affairs. He sighs, telling her that's all she needs to know. He warns her that knowing more will not do her or their family any good, leaving her with a frustrated expression. Dismissing her, the Duke orders her to leave and never speak of his hand or their conversation to anyone outside, which she acknowledges. Leaving the room, she internally recalls that her comrades were badly hurt, but still strong enough to successfully seal the Mad Dragon. She deduces from the Duke's reaction that some suspicious incident must have occurred, something that could endanger the entire family. An attendant announces a guest, but she angrily says she isn't receiving anyone today. She stops in her tracks when the attendant reveals the visitor is His Grace, Grand Duke Barpheus. With a look of fierce determination, Roseanne's change in demeanor surprises the men behind her. Resolved to speak with the Grand Duke alone, she rushes down the staircase to intercept him before the butler can. In her haste, she loses her footing and tumbles down the grand staircase. She reaches out in a panic as she continues to fall. Looking up from the floor, she sees the black-haired, red-eyed man waiting for her in the parlor. Click! She bars the door with a broom, telling him the Duke is unwell, and he remarks on her unique, confining way of hosting guests. Taking a seat opposite him, she declares her intent to ask her questions directly, and he calmly invites her to proceed. Addressing him as my lady, she asks the red-eyed man if he is connected to the sealing of the Mad Dragon. Her heart sinks as she wonders if he has somehow recognized her true self. The man, Chaitan, realizes his imperial blood allowed him to sense her soul and regrets his mistake, deciding he can no longer ask about the subjugation force. Realizing she's in a tight spot, Roseanne decides her best option is to bluff. He confirms he felt something and can't deny it, prompting Roseanne to glare and consider killing him right there. Suddenly, he grabs her hand, asking what she is doing, which leaves her completely bewildered. With a gentle smile, he asks if she is hearing voices. He explains that he is certain she is hearing the curse of the sealed Mad Dragon. Confused, she wonders about the frenzy and why Chaitan would be afflicted with such a terrible curse. The two gaze at each other in a quiet, sunlit moment. Chaitan reveals he wears a magical earring to suppress the frenzy, though it isn't completely effective. Roseanne tells the Grand Duke that she will be brief, and he teasingly asks if she's trying to drive him away. As the doors begin to rattle, she panics, realizing she'll have to leave once they open, while he watches with an amused smile. Amidst the banging on the door, she realizes his words mean that the Grand Duke needs her. He smirks, complimenting her for being quicker to understand than he expected. He proposes a deal. If she gives him what he wants, he will ensure no one ever looks down on her again. She agrees on the condition that he promises her one thing in return. Her condition is that he must fulfill any request she makes, even if it is to hand her the Emperor's head. He is taken aback by her dangerous proposal, but she explains she forced this meeting because her father, who serves the Emperor, would never permit it. As attendants finally burst into the room shouting her name, she tells him that if he wants to make a deal with her, then kiss me right now, she demands, pulling him toward her. She repeats her command with unwavering intensity, their faces now inches apart. Internally, she reasons this is the easiest way to handle the situation, telling herself to think of it as artificial respiration. Leaning in, she passionately kisses the stunned Grand Duke. The attendants who just broke in stare in utter shock at the scene before them. From that moment on, a new chapter begins for high society. Two noble ladies gossip while looking at a newspaper featuring a picture of Roseanne. The rumors of her scandalous encounter spread like wildfire, reaching even the most remote provincial nobles and royals. Speculation arises that the Leylaton family, a core part of the Emperor's faction, may now be connected to Grand Duke Barpheus. Slam! An unseen person slams their hand down in fury, demanding to know why she's causing trouble instead of staying quiet. Her father confronts her, angrily asking if she understands the implications of what she's done. She calmly questions if he's a hypocrite, reminding him that he was the one who told her to do it. Enraged, he forbids her from calling him father, so she coldly complies, calling him Duke, which infuriates him even more. The Duke, clutching his bandaged hand in frustration, declares that she will be placed under house confinement within the mansion. As her father walks away, she observes his tactical error, noting that he ordered her confined to the mansion, not her room, and thinks he still has a lot to learn. Her father, rubbing his temples in frustration, recalls that his hand has been bandaged ever since she canceled the wedding. Roseanne touches her cheek, recalling the incident and thinking she hadn't meant to use so much force. In a cutesy flashback, her father insists he got hurt by accident, but Roseanne remains skeptical. The Duke Latin scoffs at the notion that simply holding his daughter's hand could have caused such an injury. He dismisses her implication as nonsense, but she thinks to herself that it wasn't, though she'll let it go. Standing before his desk, Roseanne points out that since he forgave her for canceling the wedding, he shouldn't have caused an accident. He explodes in a rage, clutching his injured hand and demanding to know what she's doing with another man so soon after the cancellation. She calmly advises him to control his temper, but he furiously screams her name and tells her to shut her mouth. While he fumes, Roseanne internally reflects that the rational person must hold back when another gets angry over words of concern. The Duke slumps in defeat, worrying that His Majesty must have heard the scandalous rumors by now. Roseanne watches him calmly, admitting to herself that she created the rumors on purpose. She resolves that if she can't break the seal, she must weaken the Emperor's power to protect her freedom, as he will never stop hunting her. An allegorical image shows the Duke standing in a pair of giant cupped hands, held up to a divine light. A shattered reflection reveals that if rumors spread of the Duke drifting from the Emperor, the unity of his faction will collapse. She internally scolds her father for being on a leash since childhood, not realizing the power he holds as the Empire's only Duke. With a pleased expression, she concludes that it was wise to make the first move after all. The Duke, looking panicked, realizes the rumors are out of control and wonders if there's any solution left. Roseanne coolly suggests that since no other marriage proposals will come, they should simply announce her marriage to the Grand Duke. Trembling with fury, her father can only grit his teeth and mutter her name. From a clear sky, his voice roars from the mansion, ordering her out of his office immediately. The scene zooms away from the grand mansion, birds scattering into the sky. A memory of her passionate kiss with the black-haired man surfaces as a voice calls for the Grand Duke. The Grand Duke, Chaitin, snaps back to reality as the voice calls his name again. A concerned attendant asks if he's all right, noticing him touching his lips, but Chaitin says he was just thinking. The attendant angrily assumes his distraction is due to the Emperor, who made him wait all night without even showing his face. As his attendant fumes about the Emperor's disrespect, Chaitin silently resolves to stir up trouble and refuse to work. He turns to his attendant, Pavel, who agrees to answer any question since he cannot accompany him to the palace. Chaitin asks what it means when someone suddenly asks for a kiss, leaving a bewildered Pavel to wonder what he's talking about. Pavel correctly guesses that Chaitin went to see the lady instead of the Emperor, which Chaitin confirms. Shocked, Pavel pictures a romantic kiss, as Chaitin curtly tells him not to imagine things. Pavel remarks on the lady's boldness for asking for a kiss first, but Chaitin quickly tells him to be quiet. Pavel happily reminisces about crying over a pendant from his wife, recalling that the young Grand Duke cried right along with him. Chaitin asks the long-married Pavel if her asking for a kiss first means she has feelings, while the narration clarifies it was a recently canceled arranged marriage. Pavel suggests that her actions, canceling the wedding and then kissing him, might be because of Chaitin himself. He confidently lectures that ladies never ask men they have no feelings for to kiss them first. Pavel then turns the conversation back to Chaitin, asking how he is, stating that is the important part. Touching his earring, Chaitin admits the situation is bad. The Light Dragon seal is weakening and his magic artifact is breaking. He reflects that the curse would have made him kill everyone, or himself, but holding her hand helped, and her kiss stopped the inner turmoil for days. Touching his lips, Chaitin gazes forward with determination, realizing he absolutely needs that woman. Meanwhile, Roseanne enjoys a moment of peace in a sun-drenched garden, thinking how pleasurable it is to waste time. A maid brings her dessert, and Roseanne comments on how delicious the bread and jam look. As the two maids wish her well, she thanks them with a gentle smile. Walking away, one maid whispers to the other that it's the jam jar with the lid that won't open. The other maid promises not to tell, then adds that there are rumors Roseanne has changed lately. Holding the jar, Roseanne thinks that these very rumors are why she needs to learn even more. Bang! With a single twist, she effortlessly pops the lid off the stuck jam jar. Pop! The two maids turn around, their faces frozen in utter disbelief. Stunned, one of the maids wonders aloud how she possibly opened the jar. Roseanne calmly holds the open jar and innocently asks if she wasn't supposed to open it. The maids frantically wave their hands in denial, flustered by her unexpected show of strength. Roseanne explains that she opened the jam jar out of habit from helping with the master's meals. She then hands the jar back to the maids, challenging them to open it while she waits. Roseanne calmly insists that she will wait for the maid to open it, who nervously agrees. The maid struggles to twist the lid, finding it surprisingly difficult. Sweating and straining, the maid wonders how Roseanne closed the jar so tightly with her frail wrist, as Roseanne watches in silence. Roseanne tells the maid to hand over the jar if she can't open it, noting the bread is getting cold, which surprises the maid. Seeing the maid purposely close the jar tightly, Roseanne realizes it was a test to make her look incompetent. Pop! The lid suddenly flies off the jar with a burst of energy, shocking the maid. Roseanne peacefully enjoys a piece of jam-covered bread, casually asking what was so hard that she let the bread get cold. The maids apologize profusely and offer to reheat the bread, but Roseanne declines, saying it was delicious even cold and that they did well. As she stands to leave, the dazed maids quickly offer to clean everything up. Walking through a lush garden, Roseanne sighs in satisfaction, reflecting that after eating only jerky and dried fish, any food tastes amazing. Her peaceful thoughts are interrupted as a small white bird suddenly plummets from the sky right toward her. Oof. She instinctively catches the falling bird against her chest. Holding the bird, she recovers from the sudden impact with a playful wink. She gently checks on the little bird, telling it to be careful and expressing relief that it seems unhurt. Looking up, she spots a nest high in a tree and correctly guesses that's where the bird fell from. Cradling the bird, she softly promises to put it back in its nest without fear. With determination, she approaches the base of the massive tree. Holding the bird gently in her mouth, she begins to scale the tree with surprising agility. She lands gracefully on a high branch, the bird still held safely in her mouth. Perched high in the tree, she carefully approaches the nest, where other chicks are waiting. Taking the bird from her mouth, she explains she was just holding it there while she climbed. She gently places the slightly damp but safe bird back into the nest with its siblings. A leaf flutters past her face as she takes a moment to herself in the treetop. Surveying the beautiful landscape from her perch, she thinks about the land she once protected. She gazes over the estate, reflecting that she can finally see it, now that no one is searching for her. Suddenly, a maid's panicked scream of, "Young lady!" breaks the silence, and she looks down in confusion. Far below, her father and servants stare up in disbelief, demanding to know how she got up there and begging her to come down. She tells them to leave her alone, but the maids panic, one running to get help, while the other begs her not to move. Roseanne wonders if normal people can't climb trees, even when escaping danger, and decides she should avoid it to not stand out. She's surprised to see the Duke has arrived with guard knights, all of them looking utterly panicked. Her father frantically orders the knights to rescue Roseanne at once, shouting that she must not get hurt. Realizing the situation has escalated, Roseanne decides it's probably time to come down. As a knight climbs toward her, she resigns herself to waiting, feeling frustrated that she has to pretend to be a helpless noble lady. After being helped down by the knight, she politely thanks him. On the ground, her furious father confronts her, demanding to know what she's doing, and accusing her of acting out for being grounded. He points an angry finger at her, roaring for her to be silent. The Duke turns his fury on the maids, demanding to know what they were doing while Roseanne was climbing a tree. They nervously explain they were cleaning. As the maids plead, the Duke declares he has no need for employees who disrespect their master. Roseanne calmly interrupts, asking her father if he wouldn't do the same, leaving him speechless. She continues her challenge, asking if she should call the Emperor to replace him as her father. The Duke realizes, with a shock, that she is actively defending the maids against his authority. He listens intently as she states that it is parents who should not take their eyes off their children. Roseanne explains that how her employees treat her is a direct reflection of how he, the Duke, treats her. She looks him in the eye, asking if he truly expects others to fulfill his parental duties. With a pensive expression, she thinks to herself that no matter what, she will always be. She reaches out and touches the jewel on her father's chest, her gaze intense and unwavering. Turning back to the kneeling maids, Roseanne calmly tells them they can both stand up. The Duke angrily asks if Roseanne intends to ignore him, while the maids recoil in fear. Composing himself, the Duke stands beside an attendant and invites Roseanne to speak. In the garden, the Duke and his men face off against Roseanne and her two maids. The scene transitions to a beautiful starry night sky seen through an ornate window. In a dark alley, a hooded figure questions a fallen man about taking money and leaving, while below, thugs corner a young girl. The hooded figure, Roseanne, sighs with a look of exhausted relief. Surrounded by ethereal blue flowers, She reflects, sadly, that the empire is still suffering. Narration explains the imperial bloodline's historic addiction to war, showing a crowned king and a fierce female warrior. As images of starving commoners appear, she laments that even after she was sealed, life for the people has not changed. Her thoughts are interrupted by a desperate scream for help, her expression turning sharp and alert. A group of thugs corner a young girl, mocking her as she pleads for them to return her money. The girl tearfully explains the money is for bread for her starving father, but the thug callously tells her to just earn more. After counting the coins from her pouch, the thug complains it's not enough to cover the rent and a so-called seat fee. The young girl cries out in disbelief, questioning the absurd notion of a seat fee. The thug dismisses her, stating everyone else pays without complaint, while she argues they only pay because they're scared. The thug menacingly grabs the girl's chin, but an unseen Roseanne interrupts, saying she'd like to know why people are so scared. Roseanne's hand clamps down on the thug's wrist, her eyes glowing fiercely from beneath her hood as she demands to see why they should be feared. The thug scoffs at her small frame, underestimating her as just a woman with a bit of strength. He grabs her wrist back, convinced that in the end, she's nothing more than a woman. His bravado quickly fades to confusion and then panic as he struggles against her grip, his friends cheering him on, oblivious. Roseanne easily overpowers the thug, pointing out his mistake in thinking she was just a girl, as he groans in pain. She calmly tells him that he's not the only one to make that mistake when first meeting her. With a smirk, she adds that they only realize the truth after it's too late, as the thug's face twists in agony. A sickening crack echoes as she breaks his arm. He screams in pain while his cronies watch in stunned horror. Another thug steps forward, praising her courage, but vowing not to go easy, only to be met with a swift, powerful punch to the face. The second thug lies unconscious on the ground, as the remaining henchman declares he doesn't care who she is. Roseanne stands as a stalwart protector before the young girl, who gazes up at her with pure admiration. With the situation handled, Roseanne calmly pulls her hood back over her head. The defeated thugs kneel before her, swearing to collect only fair rent and abolish the seat fees, while she quietly notes she'll need weapons next time. Roseanne's final order shocks the men. They must get up and return all the seat fees they extorted this month. As she massages her wrist, she delivers a chilling warning not to seek revenge, promising it won't end so mildly next time. Roseanne gives the girl back some money, clarifying that while the seat fees are gone, she must still pay her actual rent. The grateful girl asks for her savior's name, hoping to repay her kindness one day. Roseanne gently refuses, insisting she would have helped anyone who was being wronged. She advises the girl to have the courage to help those in need, and the girl looks up, thinking her new big sis is incredibly cool. A gentle, knowing smile graces Roseanne's face as she stands cloaked in a warm golden light. She softly pats the girl's head, wishing her to live well before turning to leave. As Roseanne walks away into the night, the young girl watches her go with gratitude. The girl calls out one last time, thanking Roseanne for protecting her and vowing to never forget her. Roseanne thinks to herself that she should be the one expressing gratitude. She smiles, reflecting that she is thankful to hear the words, "You protected me." In a cute fantasy sequence, the young girl excitedly reenacts Roseanne's heroism for her father. The scene shifts to Chayton, who is being informed that Roseanne, the lady who broke off her wedding, caused a commotion by climbing a tree. Sitting together on a sofa, Roseanne assures Chayton she wasn't hurt, having only torn her dress slightly. Chayton leaps to his feet in disbelief, questioning if she truly risked her life climbing a tree, which she calmly confirms. She explains that she had to save a baby bird that had fallen from its nest, leaving a bewildered Chayton to process her reasoning. Leaning closer, Roseanne playfully teases Chayton, asking if he forgot how to climb trees and recalling he used to be quite good at it. Chayton insists that's not the point, calling her reckless, while Roseanne wishes he would just acknowledge her strength instead. Chayton asks Roseanne how she is managing with the curse, and she pauses thoughtfully before answering. Blushing fiercely, Chayton remembers their recent kiss and admits it kept the curse at bay for a few days. Roseanne notices him trail off and asks why he stopped mid-sentence, finding it irritating. Her eyes widen in realization as she concludes his sudden silence must be the curse's madness acting up. Observing his cold sweat and flushed face, she realizes he must be enduring terrible pain from the curse. Acting decisively, Roseanne reaches out and gently takes hold of Chayton's hand. Chayton is surprised to find her touch works, noting with relief that his eyes are finally clear again. Roseanne holds his hand firmly, her expression focused and determined. Chayton offers a slightly pained but grateful smile, feeling the effects of her touch. Seeing that it worked, Roseanne says she's relieved while Chayton remains silent and slightly overwhelmed. He awkwardly tells her to go ahead, as long as what she's doing isn't something strange. She addresses him by his title, and he squeezes her hand, responding with a nervous yes. Looking at him intently, she asks him a simple but direct question. How do you feel? She asks again, how is he, her expression serious and her intent unclear. Chayton panics internally, wondering what she means, while his attendant, Pavel, daydreams that she must have a crush on the Duke. Remembering Pavel's words, Chayton blushes and wonders if the princess might actually like him. With a straight face, Roseanne simply answers the question she posed to herself, stating, I like it. The two sit holding hands, a quiet and slightly awkward tension between them. Misinterpreting her words, Chayton suggests they keep things as they are, leaving Roseanne utterly confused. Roseanne gives him a deadpan, bewildered stare, not understanding his meaning. He assumes she feels uncomfortable because of the Emperor, but she's just confused about whether he is going to heal. Roseanne pulls her hand away, asking if he's unwell since they're holding hands. He realizes she was talking about the hand holding, not him, and awkwardly tells her to continue. She explains it's just a disguise technique for their fake relationship, with no emotional attachment, causing him to hide his face in embarrassment. The Duke abruptly stands and turns his back on her, and she calls out to him in confusion. He stumbles back onto the sofa, covering his face and assuring her it's fine. He makes a hasty exit, promising to visit properly another time. Roseanne has a sudden realization, smiling to herself as she thinks the Duke has grown up and might have someone else. Taking a calm sip of tea, she decides she needs to apologize to him the next time they meet. She regrets that in the commotion, she forgot to ask him the important question of how he contracted the madness. The scene transitions to Roseanne standing on an ornate bridge, looking out over a beautiful garden pond. She quietly scolds herself for getting distracted by Chayton's visit and forgetting her primary goal. Looking at her reflection, she resolves that even with a weak body, she could still fight and will know for sure once she confronts her target. Her thoughts are interrupted as a maid waves to get her attention from across the bridge. The maid hurries over, announcing a guest in the reception room, and Roseanne agrees to come immediately. Roseanne and the maid walk together through the sunlit garden path. Peeking into the reception room, she overhears talk of a mad dragon subjugation squad and is impressed. A man with light hair greets her familiarly, and Roseanne stops in her tracks, visibly startled. He questions her shocked expression as she stares at him with wide, tense eyes. He smirks, teasing that her reaction makes it seem like she was expecting someone else. The light-haired man, Crown Prince Joseph, smiles confidently at her. A dark narration describes the Empire's hero, a mere fighting dog sealed and unsealed for generations to bring victory. The tale concludes that no emperor ever sought the hero's freedom, and Crown Prince Joseph is the next master to hold the leash. Roseanne sternly thinks to herself that it was reckless to assume her visitor was the Duke. Joseph casually asks why she's so tense, claiming he only came to talk. He makes a welcoming gesture, his smile unwavering and confident. Roseanne wonders if he has inherited the imperial ability to recognize her soul, and contemplates killing him on the spot. A dark, thorny aura surrounds her as she clenches her fist, her expression turning cold and dangerous. Joseph takes a seat on the sofa and declares he will stop wasting her time and get to the point. He addresses her simply as Princess. He declares his purpose, I've come to retrieve what was lost. Roseanne looks up at Crown Prince Joseph, who holds her close and smirks as she thinks to herself that she's been found. She internally plans her next move, deciding she must find a weapon, perhaps a candlestick while he's off guard. Still held by Joseph, she prepares to fight with her bare hands as he unexpectedly asks why she broke off the marriage. Thrown by his question, she's comically bewildered, wondering if she misheard him and why he's asking about her engagement. Roseanne confronts him, questioning why her broken engagement is more important than his stated purpose of retrieving what was lost. Joseph laughs, confirming the rumors of her madness are true, and mockingly asks if she hated the marriage that much. She looks away, disturbed, thinking he has changed so much he seems like a completely different person. Joseph smirks smugly, but Roseanne internally notes his ignorance, thinking that even she would dislike a man like him. Regaining her composure, she tells her guest he's been standing too long and invites him to sit, which he accepts. Now, seated across from each other, Roseanne reflects that she was flustered and acted too hastily. Surrounded by the dark shadows of his followers, She realizes she can't kill Joseph without having to eliminate all of them. Leaning back comfortably, Joseph smoothly suggests they now have a proper conversation. He opens a pouch of sweets, dismissing her canceled marriage as unimportant up to a certain point. The Crown Prince smiles pleasantly as he holds up a single sugar cube from his pouch. Roseanne smiles fondly. Joseph warns her to distinguish between public and private matters, but she inwardly scoffs at the boy who once wrote poorly, now speaking so roughly. He pops a sweet into his mouth, musing about harnessing power as emperor, while she notes he still loves sweets. Joseph delivers a cold threat, telling her to think carefully, or Duke Barpheus will die alone on the battlefield. He flashes a menacing grin, his threat hanging in the air. A faint smile plays on Roseanne's lips as she thinks he's become perfect for an adult to tease. She looks at him from across the table and simply asks, "What?" Roseanne coldly states her relationship with the Duke is her business, shocking Joseph, who warns her madness is no excuse for such jokes. Enraged by her response, Joseph yells her title and smashes his teacup on the table with a loud crash. A powerful aura flares around Roseanne as she coolly explains that she simply did as she pleased. Joseph is left utterly stunned and confused by her brazen declaration. He watches, dumbfounded, as she effortlessly catches the flying teacup he shattered with her bare hand. Holding the captured cup, she gives him a knowing smirk, wondering if it's her turn now. He nervously asks if she plans to throw it at him, and she calmly confirms, asking why she shouldn't. Staring at the cup in her hand, he thinks her empty threat should sound ridiculous. He feels an immense, crushing pressure as a vision of a powerful, red-haired warrior appears behind her. He flinches back in fear, begging her to put the cup down and warning her that the Emperor will punish her if she hurts him. Unfazed, Roseanne dismisses his panic, calling it a joke and questioning his dramatic reaction. She decides to stop playing, noting the cleanup crew is coming and that he might actually collapse if this continues. A close-up shows intense blue eyes as a thought describes the Emperor's obedient pawn, the sealed hero. In a different scene, a scarred man warns that the Emperor's puppet would show no mercy if summoned to destroy a noble house. Back in the present, Joseph repeats the descriptions a hero used as a pawn, the Emperor's puppet. He continues his warning, stating that the puppet is incapable of feeling emotions like kindness. Joseph smirks as a flash reveals a menacing red eye, representing the hero's power. With a sudden crash, the object Roseanne was holding shatters against a window. Joseph stares ahead, his expression turning cold and serious in the aftermath of her outburst. He questions her action while she remains impassive, seemingly unfazed by what she's done. She nonchalantly explains it away, claiming her hand slipped and it was just an accident. Outraged, he reminds her she just attacked the Crown Prince, but she calmly challenges him to summon the hero he mentioned. She dares him to call his puppet, taunting that he'd have to admit he was intimidated by her first. Flustered and blushing furiously, Joseph is rendered completely speechless by her challenge. Roseanne smiles slyly, thinking aloud that such an incident might make people question the prince's competence. She suggests they end their meeting harmoniously, but leaves him to ponder the shattered porcelain on the floor. Clenching his fist in frustration, he internally admits she's right, fearing the political fallout of failing to control her. He trembles with agitation, wondering what he can possibly do in this situation. As Roseanne rises from her seat, announcing the arrival of they, Joseph accuses her of trying to flee. A blonde woman in an elegant dress stands before a large door, stating she was about to open it. A mustached man bursts through the door, loudly welcoming the Crown Prince and announcing he's prepared the finest refreshments. He and the blonde woman look towards the empty sofa in confusion. Mustached man angrily assumes the servants prepared snacks only for her as a petty act of revenge. Roseanne calmly explains that's not it, leaving the man bewildered. She directs his attention elsewhere in the room, causing him to gasp in shock. The mustached man despairs over a newly purchased, imported item that has been destroyed. He looks at the shattered pieces on the floor, questioning why a teacup is broken there. He asks Roseanne if she's responsible, and she coldly confirms she threw it. He grabs her shoulders, furiously scolding her for her reckless behavior and causing trouble. She calmly points out that the Crown Prince, now seen disheveled on the sofa, also committed a reckless act. Flustered, the mustached man backpedals, defending the prince by claiming he only retaliated because she threw something first. With a sharp look, Roseanne firmly states that the Crown Prince threw first. Overwhelmed by their argument, the mustached man begs them to stop. He apologizes profusely to the Crown Prince, blaming Roseanne's recent unwellness, but Joseph simply calls the display pathetic. Roseanne announces her departure, telling the man to handle the mess since he has abandoned his fatherly role. He grabs her arm, calling her name and pleading for her to stay a little longer. As he stares at her with conflicted eyes, Roseanne marvels that he feels more burdened to keep her than the Emperor himself. She gently takes his hand, addressing him as Your Grace, and he stammers her name in surprise. With a smirk, she dismisses him to take care of the rest, thinking he's pathetic as he gasps in shock. He desperately calls out her name as she walks away without a second glance. As a royal carriage departs the estate, a thought reveals that the Emperor surely knows the truth. Roseanne watches from a window, believing the Emperor intentionally keeps his son in the dark. She reflects that to the Emperor, his own son is merely a rival for the throne, especially now that he has lost the greatest power. The image of the empty throne reinforces the idea of the prince as a rival aiming for power. Roseanne sits alone, questioning why Joseph would call her an emotionless puppet, and wondering if that's how he truly sees her. Clenching her fist, she bitterly thinks that she at least expected him to see her as a human being. Overwhelmed with rage, she imagines strangling the Emperor, a feat only prevented by the sealing magic that binds her. She looks at her hand, bleeding from crushing the wooden armrest, and despairs that her weak body makes breaking into the palace impossible. A confident smile appears on her face as she formulates a new plan. She thinks of Duke Chayton Barfius, realizing his madness makes her indispensable to him. With a sly look, Roseanne concludes that her indispensability is guaranteed as long as Chayton exists. Hearing a knock, she calmly invites the person in. A maid enters, and Roseanne, seated with a spread of desserts, informs her that she has a few tasks. Roseanne gives the maid a dazzling smile, which visibly startles her. The maid is shocked when Roseanne orders her to the Duke's mansion under the guise of delivering a message. Roseanne wonders why the maid is hesitant, recalling she saved her from being fired, and questions if there's another reason she won't go. The maid insists she can't go even if tempted, but Roseanne is confused, denying she ever tempted her. Roseanne offers to send someone else, prompting the maid to quickly clarify that wasn't her intention. The maid explains that the Duke has forbidden anyone from the household from even mentioning a certain man's name, and she fears being fired. Roseanne stands up with a knowing look, saying she understands the maid's official reason for now, leaving the maid confused. The maid panics internally when she notices the broken armrest on the chair, worrying she'll be blamed for not managing things carefully. As the maid resolves to replace the chair, Roseanne casually hands her the broken piece. Roseanne begins handing over various trinkets from her vanity, and the flustered maid quickly agrees to take them. The maid stares in awe at her hands, now full of sparkling, expensive-looking jewels. Roseanne offers all the jewels as a reward if the maid successfully completes the errand. The maid, now highly motivated, thinks to herself that no one would dare refuse such an order. With a look of fierce determination, the maid clutches the jewels and declares she will go to Duke Barfius's mansion. When the maid questions if the Duke's name is taboo, Roseanne casually dismisses her concern, stating he isn't there. The maid excitedly promises to perform a somersault at the Duke's mansion to ensure everyone notices her arrival. With one final task in mind, Roseanne tells her maid to call a jeweler. Roseanne holds up her empty jewelry box, a cascade of precious gems tumbling out as she sets her plan in motion. Looking at the now empty box, she coolly states her intention to refill it. She instructs her shocked maid to charge everything to the Duke's account. Roseanne bitterly reflects on how her father showed no concern for her humiliation, deciding a simple jeweler's bill won't suffice. A wicked smile forms on Roseanne's face as she tells her overjoyed maid to call a designer as well, intending to spend his wealth grandly. Click. The maid eagerly accepts the order and hurries out of the room. Later, while sitting at her vanity, Roseanne examines a piece of jewelry and notes the gemstone is larger than she'd thought. She holds a small, ornate piece to her head, looking thoughtful and determined. In a sunlit garden, two maids whisper about a pink-haired woman on a swing, noting how absent-minded she's been all day. The scene returns to Roseanne, who looks up at the sky and whimsically spots a cloud shaped like a rabbit. Her maid joins in, asking what cloud shape she should look for next and suggesting a dragonfly. A man's furious shout of Roseanne echoes through the garden, but she remains calm, thinking he's finally arrived. The mustached Duke storms towards her on the swing, angrily calling her a rascal. He furiously brandishes a long scroll, and when she correctly identifies it as an invoice, he shouts that it's obvious. Leaning over the swing in frustration, he fumes while she casually acknowledges the bill. She innocently asks if the Duke ever gave her money, leaving him sputtering in disbelief. Roseanne points first to him and then herself, coolly reminding him that he is the parent. She continues lecturing the overwhelmed Duke from her seat on the swing. Visibly defeated, he hands her the long, expensive-looking invoice. She rationalizes her spending spree by stating that teaching a child about finances is also a parent's duty. With arms crossed, the Duke sternly lectures her, hoping she learns the consequences of reckless spending. Roseanne feigns surprise, turning away and declaring that she has no money to pay the bill. Enraged, he points at her and declares it's her problem to solve, ordering her to sell her jewelry if she must. His words trigger an idea, and Roseanne's eyes light up with sudden inspiration. She jumps up and grabs the startled Duke, excitedly asking if he's sure it's all right to sell the jewelry, and he stammers his agreement. Turning to her maid, Roseanne immediately gives the order to have the merchant guild sell the items she had consigned. When the maid hesitates, Roseanne firmly commands her to sell everything, without leaving anything behind. Seeing the Duke's silent consent, the maid nervously agrees and rushes off to carry out the order. The Duke watches her leave, remarking with surprise that he didn't think Roseanne was capable of cleaning up after herself. He tells her to take this as a lesson and avoid impulsive spending from now on. He then chides her for her informal speech, reminding her that she spoke that way to the crown prince. Roseanne scoffs at his concern, retorting that she hasn't insulted royalty yet and sees nothing wrong with speaking casually to that brat. As the Duke warns her to watch her words, she inwardly dismisses him as pathetic. She confidently thinks to herself that even if she insulted royalty, they lack the power to punish her directly. Standing boldly, she explains it would be foolish to eliminate her, a core asset of the Emperor's own faction. Dismissing the crown prince as a mere kitten, Roseanne's logic stuns the Duke, who realizes he needs to be re-educated. She reassures her confused father, clarifying that she only sold the secret gifts from the Emperor, not the official ones. A wave of electric shock hits the Duke as he realizes she sold the Emperor's personal gifts, which she confirms she needed to do. He panics about falling out of the Emperor's favor, but Roseanne calmly reminds him they can't be killed yet. She offers a stunning promise. If the Emperor tries to kill him, she will save him, leaving the Duke utterly baffled. Placing a hand on her chest, Roseanne declares that the strongest person in the Empire is now his child. With a warm smile, she gently concedes to his authority, saying, "Yes, Duke." As he places his hands on her shoulders, a thought reveals that something has been extended by 1 month. In a peaceful garden, Roseanne closes her eyes and gently inhales the sweet fragrance of a pink rose. Kneeling among the flowers, she tells her maid that the roses will be in full bloom by tomorrow, their scent growing even stronger. The maid timidly tries to get Roseanne's attention. When asked about her plans for the day, Roseanne simply says she is enjoying the flowers. She adds that she will also be measuring how much the sprouts have grown to her maid's resigned disappointment. The maid gently takes Roseanne's arm, suggesting there are other fun things they could do together. As Roseanne and her maid stroll through the garden, she muses that her father's reaction must have been entertaining, and that Chayton is likely still unaware of her disappearance. A vision reveals a powerful red-haired woman and a massive wolf, illustrating that if Chayton lost her power and the Emperor's support, he would rebel and seize the throne. The maid eagerly asks Roseanne if she has an idea for something fun to do. When the maid suggests inviting a friend over, Roseanne flatly replies that she doesn't have any friends. The maid becomes flustered, struggling to think of another suggestion. Roseanne looks on thoughtfully as her anxious maid continues to stammer. The maid excitedly offers to bring the library key, and Roseanne agrees, noting to herself how effective gifting a few jewels can be. A male servant hurries into the garden, calling for Miss Roseanne and interrupting her quiet moment. The man announces that a guest, Miss Brina from Potlinga, has come to see her, much to Roseanne's surprise. While the maid looks shocked by the news, Roseanne's expression turns serious and calculating. Roseanne confirms with the servant that this guest is the one who holds the title Galaxy. She coldly instructs the servant to make the uninvited guest wait, stating it's the least she should accept. As the servant leaves, Roseanne wonders why Brina would visit unannounced, recalling they never had a good relationship. Her maid optimistically suggests that perhaps Miss Brina wants to become closer friends. Roseanne gives the maid a skeptical look, and the maid quickly retracts her hopeful suggestion. The maid tries to sell the friendship, explaining Miss Brina is the galaxy of the sky and a good social connection, but Roseanne dismisses her, showing no interest. Roseanne reflects that the title was given by the late Emperor, and it's fortunate people believe that version of the story. In a flashback to a military camp, a voice laments the difficulty of finding a suitable consort for the crown prince. A red-haired warrior asks the king how to summon noble ladies to a banquet, but he dismisses her, focused on the civil war until she insists it's equally important. The warrior suggests creating a prestigious title, like the Galaxy of the Sky, to be awarded annually to a smart young lady to encourage attendance. Delighted by the hero's brilliant idea, the king claps his hands and thanks her profusely. Her suggestion accepted, the red-haired warrior turns to take her leave from the king's tent. Back in the present, Roseanne runs a hand through her hair, annoyed that they actually used her lazy, off-the-cuff idea. She recalls how the king later took credit for the idea himself, smugly accepting praise for his wonderful title. Her maid encourages her to try for the Galaxy of the Sky title, but Roseanne claims she's not good at thinking, leaving the maid confused. When Roseanne asks if the title is for the smartest lady, her maid cheerfully corrects her, insisting it's for the most beautiful, because the galaxy is beautiful. Roseanne inwardly questions the arbitrary standard of beauty. She grimaces, thinking that she still hasn't fully absorbed all the memories contained within this body. Roseanne tells her maid she has no interest in being the galaxy or the crown prince's consort, dismissing what her maid calls the highest honor. Deciding not to delay any longer, Roseanne and her maid head toward the mansion to meet the uninvited guest. Slam! As the doors open, Roseanne thinks that while she wasn't expecting anything, the scene inside is still surprising. Peeking into the room, Roseanne concludes that her guest definitely didn't come to make friends. She sees the pink-haired Miss Brina seated with her guards, fanning herself impatiently in the reception room. Brina sits with a severe expression, clearly annoyed at having been kept waiting. Now seated opposite her guest, Roseanne tries to grasp a faint memory connected to the Count of Potlinga's family. Brina's male companion immediately accuses Lady Laylaton of being rude for making them wait so long without a greeting. Roseanne coolly retorts that she considers them uninvited intruders and believes an apology should precede any greeting. Brina scoffs at being called an intruder, questioning if Roseanne simply missed a message, but she falters under Roseanne's steady gaze. Cutting the argument short, Roseanne tells them to state their business quickly and then leave. Brina's companion, Mark, fumes at the rudeness, but she calmly gestures for him to stop. Brina condescendingly tells Mark not to be angry, remarking that the uneducated don't know they're rude and must be tolerated. Hearing Brina call her princess while thinking she's lost her mind, Roseanne's eyes narrow with cold realization. A thought clicks into place as Roseanne fingers her chin, remembering something important about the Count of Potlinga. She decides her guest's opinion on her sanity is irrelevant to her goals. Snapping her fan shut, Brina announces that she has come to offer the princess some advice. She warns Roseanne not to get any foolish ideas just because the crown prince paid her a visit. Roseanne's eyes widen as she finally connects the dots, realizing the crown prince's match is from the Potlinga family. With a brilliant, mocking smile, Roseanne loudly declares she remembers them now, the family that bought their way into the nobility. Stunned and enraged, Brina demands to know how she discovered their family's century-old secret, while Roseanne sighs, feeling refreshed by the confrontation. Trembling with anger, Brina declares she can't bear to listen to any more of Roseanne's insults. Enraged, Brina's companion Mark furiously demands to know how Roseanne dares to be so rude to his master. With a flick of her hand, Roseanne makes a sudden, decisive gesture. As Roseanne calmly touches her choker, a shocked voice cries out, "P, princess!" Brina leans back and asks if Roseanne is serious about accepting Mark's duel challenge, while Roseanne feigns confusion, wondering about their sudden confidence. Roseanne continues her act of bewilderment, clutching her dress and thinking, "Really? Truly?" Still looking perplexed, she inwardly questions if this is for real. Brina lightly scolds Mark for acting without permission, but he insists he couldn't tolerate anyone disrespecting her. With a pleased smile, Brina informs Roseanne that since she has accepted the duel, an ancient tradition, she cannot possibly retract it. Roseanne reflects on the old days of dueling, finding modern challenges too sophisticated compared to simply charging with a sword. As Brina prepares to leave, promising to send a letter with the date, Roseanne surprises her by asking why they can't just duel right now. Opening the door, Brina tells Roseanne to go find a knight who is willing to fight Mark on her behalf. With a parting sneer, Brina doubts Roseanne will be able to find a champion at all. At the magnificent Laylaton estate, a voice urgently calls for the young master. The maid anxiously asks Roseanne to cancel the duel, worried no one would dare fight Brina's guard, but Roseanne simply asks if he's really that formidable. The maid explains that even being a candidate for a position is a testament to his recognized skill, but Roseanne remains unimpressed. When Roseanne suggests fighting herself, her maid strongly advises against it, explaining that people would mock her for not having a single knight for protection. Roseanne thinks that fighting herself would unfortunately draw the Emperor's unwanted attention. A truly annoying prospect. Cheerful once more, Roseanne asks her maid where to go next, only for the confused maid to remind her they've already arrived. The maid confirms she guided Roseanne to the training ground as requested, jogging her memory. Roseanne observes the lounging Lilatan knights and, with a dark aura, grimly concludes they have really gone downhill. She instructs her maid to announce her arrival to the distracted knights. The maid loudly proclaims Lady Roseanne's arrival and calls for the knights to show respect, while Roseanne waits with a bored expression. The lazy knights barely stir, one of them mishearing the announcement and wondering if the Duke has arrived. With a stern look, Roseanne notes that not a single person has approached to greet her properly. The most respect she receives is a lazy nod from a few knights after making eye contact. Rejecting her maid's offer to shout louder, Roseanne decides to handle it herself, thinking their behavior reminds her of her own wedding. Roseanne purposefully strides toward the lounging group of disrespectful knights. Looming over them with a powerful presence, she coldly asks if they're getting paid to do nothing. Her expression is resolute, showing she will not tolerate their insolence. Roseanne muses that she's used to such disrespect, but warns that in her day, such behavior would have earned them a taste of hell, causing her maid to panic. She correctly guesses their lazy routine of faking their training reports, prompting one knight to call her harsh. Promising to be even harsher from now on, Roseanne tells all the knights to pack their bags. With a brilliant, terrifying smile, Roseanne declares that they are all fired, leaving the knights utterly stunned. As the knights finally stand, she taunts them about losing their easy job, and one glares, thinking she's crossed a line. Roseanne orders her worried maid to call the butler and make the firings official. And Knight smugly informs her that only the Duke has the authority to fire them, telling her she can't just give them orders. Unfazed, Roseanne agrees to simply call the Duke instead and calmly orders her maid to fetch him, shocking the knights. She decides the Duke should take responsibility for his knights anyway, and threatens to sell something of his if he doesn't come quickly. As the maid hurries off, Roseanne scoffs at the knight's pathetic fear at the mere mention of the Duke. The knight's captain arrives, cheerfully claiming they were just taking a break after some very difficult training. Roseanne scoffs internally at his lie, wondering how gullible he thinks she is to believe they trained with such soft skin. The captain apologizes for his men's attitude, blaming Roseanne's accusation for upsetting them, but she coolly asks if she's really the one at fault. He defends his men, who eagerly agree that they train hard and shouldn't be judged so harshly. Smirking, Roseanne says their claim makes things easy and announces that Brina's guard, Sir Mark, has challenged her to a duel. She then asks for one of the hard training knights to volunteer to fight in her place. An awkward silence falls over the group as no one steps forward, forcing Roseanne to repeat her request to the cowards. With a triumphant sneer, Roseanne mocks their claims of training hard, but the captain insists Sir Mark is an exception. She cuts through their excuses, calling it a long-winded way to admit they're scared, though they claim it's merely inefficient to fight a losing battle. Roseanne delivers a chilling lecture, condemning them for excusing their own cowardice, while getting angry at her for speaking the truth. Coughing nervously, the captain claims they would have gladly stepped up if the opponent wasn't the formidable Sir Mark. A brown-haired man with red eyes scoffs, thinking she would probably lose a fight, even to common thugs. Roseanne repeats her insult that he looks weaker than thugs, prompting the man to warn her that his tolerance has a limit. With a confident smile, Roseanne turns the tables, coolly asking who is really tolerating whom in this situation. In a cute chibi fantasy, she internally scolds the pathetic ducal knights, comparing them to useless wildcats. The brown-haired man offers to prove their strength, gripping his sword and darkly hinting he might make a slight mistake in his anger. Surrounded by a menacing aura, he challenges her, asking if he shouldn't demonstrate that they are superior to thugs. Roseanne calmly closes her eyes, thinking his current actions are even worse than a thug's. As his hand hovers over his sword's pommel, she quietly asks if he intends to draw it. Offering him an out, Roseanne then immediately goads him, insisting he must draw his sword to prove himself. The enraged commander takes the bait, shouting if she truly believes he can't draw his weapon. As he grips his sword to draw, Roseanne places her hand over his, and he snarls that she'll regret it. His face contorts with effort and disbelief as he struggles fruitlessly, screaming that this is the last time. The commander stares in flustered shock as Roseanne smiles serenely, asking about the sword. With both their hands on the hilt, it becomes clear the sword simply won't come out of its scabbard. While his men cheer him on, The commander sweats in a panic, silently cursing them as fools. He trembles, realizing his men wouldn't understand the impossible situation. He can barely believe himself. He looks up to see Roseanne radiating a powerful aura, realizing he is being completely overwhelmed by the young lady. Leaning in close, Roseanne's face is shrouded in shadow as she asks if he has anything to say about her. The commander understands her question is a threat to his life, and, baffled by her hidden power, decides he can only submit. Visibly shaken, he stammers that he has nothing to say at all. Dropping to his knees, the commander bows low and begs Lady Roseanne for her forgiveness. Roseanne looks down upon the kneeling commander with a calm, triumphant smile. As other knights whisper about the strange dismissal, one with a ponytail orders them to shut up and apologize. The commander turns to his stunned men and furiously orders them to apologize immediately if they want to live. The flustered knights quickly agree, deciding to follow their commander's desperate order. As the entire group of knights bows their heads, one formally apologizes to Lady Roseanne on their behalf. Roseanne reflects that since knights value strength and rank above all, they won't cause any more trouble. She knows it doesn't matter if they aren't all convinced, because their commander has bowed to her. As the knights prepare to leave, Roseanne mockingly offers them a guard escort, stunning them into silence. She feigns innocence, looking at the stunned knight and simply asking, "Huh?" Turning around, Roseanne is surprised to see her maid, River, and asks why she isn't running her errand. River explains the Duke was out, forcing her to return early, and Roseanne realizes her maid witnessed the entire confrontation. Roseanne calmly asks for the maid's name, and she nervously replies, "River." Repeating her name, Roseanne places a massive, brilliant diamond ring into River's hand. She looks River in the eye and firmly tells her that she hopes what just happened remains a secret. River enthusiastically promises to keep her mouth shut, while Roseanne internally muses how easily money solves problems. River asks if she should call a carriage, and Roseanne agrees, teasing her about her slow pace. Walking away, River worries the knights might talk, but Roseanne assures her they won't dare boast of their humiliation. A rack of weapons stands silent as Roseanne's narration confirms there's no need to call the Duke. As the commander watches some of his men leave, she thinks that those who only care for pride will depart on their own. He believes the remaining knights, having felt her power, will change for the better, as they are fundamentally still knights. Roseanne, however, realizes the most important point is that she now has no capable knights for the upcoming duel. As she and River approach their carriage, Roseanne sighs, concluding she may have to enter the duel herself. Later in a sunny garden, River asks if Roseanne will simply do nothing as the duel date approaches, and she asks what else she can do. River excitedly suggests hiring mercenaries, reminding Roseanne they still have money from selling the Duke's valuables. Roseanne's expression darkens as she thinks with disdain about giving money to those shameless brutes. River recalls a past incident where mercenaries took their payment and ran, but Roseanne muses that they probably didn't do it maliciously. River looks at her lady with hopeful anticipation, as Roseanne sits in silent contemplation. Roseanne tells River not to worry so much, but her maid protests that if Roseanne loses the duel, her honor will be ruined. Roseanne coolly asks what honor she has to tarnish, leaving her maid speechless and aghast. A bubbly, chibi interlude shows Roseanne and her maid's mutual confusion. Stretching languidly, Roseanne advises her maid not to fixate on winning or losing, because sometimes running away is fine. After a moment of confusion, Roseanne's demeanor sharpens as she suddenly asks her maid to tell her more about that bet. Now intensely interested, Roseanne rapidly questions her maid about the duel's betting stakes and location, asking how to participate, while the shocked maid reminds her of a previous fight with the Duke. Roseanne declares she's tired of her current life and wants money, prompting her maid to ask if she's being serious. Insisting she's serious, Roseanne points forward and orders her maid to lead the way so they can arrive before betting closes. In a lavish golden hall, a hand writes in a ledger, placing a massive bet of 1 million gold on Potlenga's victory. A group of nobles remarks on the bet, with a reddish brown-haired man agreeing that betting on the Lelatin family would be throwing money away. The reddish brown-haired noble in the green coat smiles condescendingly. As a betting ledger shows entries for both Lelatin and Potlenga, a noble wonders if Roseanne might also bet on Potlenga's side for an interesting twist. The noble in the green coat laughs with two women, callously remarking that if Roseanne had just married him, she wouldn't be facing this foolish humiliation. A blonde woman named Lady Jagelia agrees with Brina, stating that it's natural for Roseanne to have doubts about her own family's knights. Brina smugly notes that everyone has thankfully bet on her side and is prompted to place her own wager. Raising the stakes, Brina announces she will bet 10 million gold on the House of Potlenga. Brina signs the ledger with a flourish, finalizing her bet in support of Sir Mark's honorable fight. As another lady praises her boldness and fitness to be crown princess, Brina smiles with satisfaction. A sudden commotion from outside startles the betting party, who turn in confusion toward the noise. A firm voice rings out, declaring, "I said I'm not attending the ball." Roseanne makes her dramatic entrance, looking utterly resolute. She walks into the stunned silence of the grand hall, her presence commanding everyone's attention. With a confident smile, Roseanne takes in the shocked crowd as they whisper her name. Lady Lile Layton? A man with reddish-brown hair stammers in disbelief. R.O., Roseanne? Roseanne points directly at the reddish-brown-haired man, a flicker of recognition in her eyes as she says, "Ah, there you are." Without preamble, she declares her bet, 30 million gold. The reddish-brown-haired man stares in utter shock, only able to ask, "What?" A decorative panel marks a shift in the tense scene. Roseanne stands before the baffled group, having completely seized control of the moment. Pinching the young lord's cheek, she pointedly asks if he understands her, to which he can only respond with a confused, "Huh?" She calmly informs the stunned young lord that she wants to participate in the bet. The young lord panics, shouting that he doesn't care about that, and frantically demands to know who she just bet 30 million gold on. Roseanne matter-of-factly states she bet on the Relaton family, then coolly asks the shocked young lord if she should bet on the other side instead. Brina and the young lord look on, their expressions a mixture of disbelief and horror at her audacity. An enraged Brina realizes Roseanne's huge bet is equivalent to the Relaton family, formally declaring they'll defeat Sir Mark. Turning Brina's logic against her, Roseanne icily suggests that by the same token, everyone who bet on the Potlenga family has declared war on hers. A noble woman looks on, her face pale with shock at the sudden, dangerous escalation. The room descends into chaos as nobles question Brina and marvel at how Roseanne single-handedly changed the entire mood. The narration concludes that the once timid Lady Rylaton, a mere shell, now overwhelms everyone with her powerful presence alone. The young lord and Brina can only stare in disbelief at the transformed Roseanne. An off-screen voice dismisses Roseanne's words, claiming it's just a fun bet and no one would actually confront the powerful Rylaton family. Hearing this, Roseanne offers a bright, disarming smile. The young lord and Brina nervously agree it's just for amusement, with Brina claiming she only bet to support her friend, Lady Potlenga. Taking them at their word, Roseanne moves to the ledger to finalize her bet as the crowd watches. As she writes, Roseanne muses that since she's betting her family's honor, which is more precious than gold, she thankfully won't have to raid the Duke's bedroom for cash. After signing, Roseanne bids the stunned nobles to enjoy themselves, then coolly dismisses them as uninvited guests who will now be leaving. The scene closes on the doors, emphasizing her final, authoritative dismissal. Two guests quietly comment that Duke Rylaton has raised a formidable tiger cub. Leaning against a pillar, a dark-haired man in a military uniform observes Roseanne's display of confidence, thinking this might change things. The scene transitions as Roseanne's maid walks through a bright, sunlit garden. Roseanne calmly notes the chaotic situation while sitting in the garden as her flustered maid apologizes. The maid panics, worrying that with the duel tomorrow, they might anger the anonymous person who bet a staggering 50 million gold on them if they lose. As the maid begins to suggest hiring a mercenary, Roseanne sharply cuts her off, forbidding her from even bringing up the topic. Roseanne continues her thought, recalling that she had warned her maid about this before, as a tiny bird is shown falling from its nest. In a flash of fiery determination, Roseanne asks if losing 30 million gold is an appropriate defeat, then declares that from now on, only victory will exist in her life, terrifying her maid. The maid insists that to win and increase the 30 million, they absolutely need a knight, while Roseanne thoughtfully considers the problem. The maid worries that the knight who came forward was their last hope, but Roseanne questions what difference he would make. The maid argues they should at least try, as he showed up for Roseanne's sake. Roseanne dismissively concludes the knight is just seeking last-minute credit, imagining the Duke must have threatened him with being fired to motivate him. Roseanne acknowledges his courage is commendable, but says his future efforts will determine his true worth, inspiring her maid to promise she will work hard too. When Roseanne asks why she's so passionate about what is ultimately Roseanne's duel, the maid becomes flustered and stammers for an answer. Blushing, The maid explains that her passion comes from Roseanne's generosity toward her. The maid coyly hints that she might also get an extra reward, which seems to spark a realization in Roseanne. Finding her maid's selfish motive refreshing, Roseanne says she likes that she has a proper reason, much to the maid's surprise. Roseanne sips her tea with a smile, telling her maid to continue being honest and warning that any insincere lies will result in her immediate dismissal. The maid nervously promises to keep that in mind, and Roseanne assures her to just continue as she has been. In a cute chibi interlude, Roseanne asks about the library key, but her maid tries to deflect. Roseanne reminds her not to be vague after their recent talk about honesty. The maid admits she failed to get the key because the Duke was furious about the unauthorized bet and ordered her to resolve the duel first, prompting Roseanne to call him petty. Roseanne pauses, realizing something has felt strange to her for some time. She asks how everyone knows she hasn't found a knight yet, a detail that shouldn't be public, and her maid nervously blames the rumors. Roseanne reasons that while news of the duel could have leaked, the fact that she couldn't find a knight is internal information. Her maid looks on with a worried expression, agreeing that the situation is concerning. With a knowing smile, Roseanne looks aside and announces that it seems her invited guest has finally arrived. A man's shoes enter the frame as a voice addresses Lady Roseanne. A butler announces the arrival of His Highness Grand Duke Barpheus, who offers Roseanne a formal bow. Roseanne smiles pleasantly, telling her butler to escort the Grand Duke to the drawing room and let him know she's been waiting eagerly. As her maid questions why she invited the Grand Duke, Roseanne states simply that she can't afford to let 30 million gold fly away. Roseanne stands with resolute purpose, pointing forward as her shocked maid watches. The scene transitions to the interior of a lavish room, focusing on an ornate chandelier. A beautiful, flower-framed portrait captures a contemplative Roseanne. Grand Duke Barpheus asks Roseanne if something is wrong, and she reassures him not to worry, while privately resolving not to be swayed by him. As he sits beside her, Barpheus wonders at her response and hardens his own resolve, determined not to be swayed by Roseanne Rileton. In a wistful flashback, he imagines asking her why she didn't come to him sooner. The two sit close together on an elegant sofa, a quiet tension between them. Leaning closer, Barpheus tells Roseanne he kept waiting for her to contact him after she left, claiming to be busy. A close-up reveals his flushed cheeks and the longing in his gaze. Internally, he tells himself not to say such things so casually again, covering his embarrassed, blushing face. Overcome with emotion, the Grand Duke blushes furiously, leaving a confused Roseanne to wonder what is happening. Composing himself, he asks if she is all right, though a thought bubble suggests he's the one who seems unwell, and she asks what he means. He asks about Joseph's visit, which she confirms, leading him to wrongly assume she was warned to stay away from him. Morpheus laments being so blinded by his own problems that he failed to consider her difficult position and never thought to suppress his madness. An allegorical image depicts the Duchess of Lilatin trapped in a spider's web, illustrating his realization that the pressure on her must be immense. He vows to handle his curse alone, but Roseanne interrupts, directly asking if he was the one who bet 50 million gold. Startled and sweating, Barpheus nervously asks why she would suddenly bring up 50 million gold. Roseanne stands and lays out the obvious facts. Her opponents are a future Crown Princess candidate and a former Imperial Guard candidate. She explains that because of the overwhelming odds, almost no one is betting on her side. With a sly smile, she concludes that it's highly improbable anyone would anonymously bet such a huge sum, cornering a sweating Barpheus. His eyes glowing red with frustration, Barpheus internally curses, realizing he's been caught. A flashback shows him at the betting hall, lamenting that even after tipping the servant and placing the bet anonymously, he was still found out. Roseanne directly asks why he came in person, pointing out his message could have been sent by a messenger. She presses him for an answer, asking why, of all days, he chose today to visit her personally, but he remains silent. Roseanne watches him with a knowing, confident smile. Running a hand through his hair in frustration, Barpheus realizes he can't hide anything from her, and laments being so easy to read. With a satisfied smile, Roseanne simply confirms, "That's right," as the flustered Grand Duke sits beside her in defeat. Bartholomew offers to lend her a knight from his duchy, but Roseanne abruptly shouts, "No!" and grabs his wrist to stop him. Gazing at him intently, Roseanne states that a substitute knight is not what she was waiting for. She wants him to fight for her, not on his own orders. She boldly grabs his tie, pulling him closer and declaring that she wants the Grand Duke himself to step forward for the duel. In a cute chibi fantasy, a blushing Barpheus asks if she's asking him to stand in the duel, but she pokes his cheek, retorting that he's the one who doesn't seem to know what a knight is. She reminds him that he is the renowned commander of the Third Imperial Knight Order, the Shadow Knights, constantly sent into battle by the Emperor. Roseanne presses her advantage, asking if there's anyone in the Empire more knightly than him, and noting it would be odd if he couldn't fight when even mercenaries can participate. Barnfus internally concedes that she's right, but resolves that even so, he cannot step forward. He asks if she heard him, and when she confirms she did, he insists that her actions suggest otherwise. Morpheus explains that the real reason he came was to apologize for putting her and her family in a difficult position by being involved with him. Roseanne dismisses his concerns as a matter between their families, prompting Barpheus to warn her that there is nothing to be gained by getting close to him. A subtle glimmer emanates from the brooch on Roseanne's dress. A stunned Barpheus looks at Roseanne, asking what she just said. He has a fleeting memory of a red-haired woman looking down at him as a child, thinking he suddenly feels small before dismissing the thought. Roseanne offers a simple solution. If he's worried, he can make their association beneficial for her, just as she helped him, leaving him to ponder her words. A montage of their intimate moments flashes through his mind, as a confused Barpheus wonders how she helped him. Grabbing her shoulder, he muses that while he doesn't see her benefit, perhaps he can offer compensation for the trouble he's caused. He tightens his grip, intensely telling her that she has to come to him. Leaning in close, he assures her she doesn't need to worry about Crown Prince Joseph's visit. The serious mood breaks as a chibi. Barpheus asks about gold, and Roseanne cheerfully confirms. Roseanne strikes a triumphant pose, demanding he gather a lot of gold, while Barpheus panics, internally chanting for himself not to get swept away. Returning to reality, Roseanne reveals she handled the Crown Prince herself, shocking Barpheus with her audacity. His eyes glowing red, Barpheus expresses his disbelief that nothing happened, knowing the prince is bloodthirsty and wouldn't have left quietly. In a cute, nonchalant manner, Roseanne explains that the prince threw a teacup, which angered her, leaving Barpheus to ask what happened next. Enraged on her behalf, Barpheus jumps up, asking if the prince threw a teacup at her, only for Roseanne to calmly state, "I threw one back." Barpheus runs a hand through his hair, calling the prince insane, but Roseanne simply reminds him again that she retaliated in kind. Ignoring her retort, he rushes to her side, frantically checking her for injuries and insisting she see a doctor if she feels even slightly off. He continues to fuss over her, warning that even a small shard of glass could get infected. Roseanne reflects on the strange feeling of someone worrying over a tiny piece of glass, when she never expected anyone to care, even when she was covered in blood. She reassures him that she's fine, and he finally relaxes, saying that's a relief. Stepping back, Barpheus asks if the Crown Prince did anything else to her. A speech bubble reveals the prince's threat. He would call the hero, the Emperor's doll, to kill her and annihilate her entire family. Roseanne stands calmly by the window, having relayed the dire threat. Barpheus's expression darkens as he looks toward the window, calling the prince a vicious bastard for his threat. He firmly states that the Emperor would never summon the hero for such a personal matter, regardless of the prince's request. Bartholomew confidently walks toward Roseanne, who remains by the window. Standing before her, he adds that the hero would never kill an innocent duchess, no matter the Emperor's command. Roseanne looks up at him, her expression unreadable as she takes in his assurance. His reflection appears in her eye as she recalls his words, "A person who doesn't kill the innocent." With newfound resolve, she decides she must keep this man by her side. A weary Barpheus turns to her, asking if they're back to discussing that again. He flinches in surprise when she simply asks, "What?" He reminds her their agreement was just to pretend to be in love, gesturing to create distance between them. Barmetheus struggles with his own feelings, admitting to himself that he desperately wants to hold her hand and is fighting not to get swept away. A decorative panel marks a shift in the conversation, focusing on the title of Grand Duke. Roseanne gazes at him intently, telling him to stop worrying about others and just hold on to her until the very end. With a radiant smile, she reaches out her hand, offering him a partnership. Bartholomew stares down at her offered hand, his expression a storm of conflict and indecision. In a romantic vision, Roseanne and Barpheus hold hands and dance elegantly in a sunlit hall. The scene shifts to a grand estate, as the narrator declares that the awaited day has finally arrived. At a bustling garden party, a thought bubble reveals that everything has been perfectly arranged, with acquaintances invited beforehand. A pink-haired woman and her companions greet Roseanne and her maid, with the woman smugly thinking that Lady Lilatin won't dare show her face in society after today. The pink-haired woman explains to her companion that she had to let the large, rumor-drawn crowd stay since postponing the duel wasn't an option. She introduces Sub-Viscount Giselia as the impartial judge, smugly adding that a fair referee won't change the outcome. As Giselia asks if the terms are acceptable, Roseanne's maid panics over the obvious trap, but Roseanne calmly accepts. The pink-haired woman taunts Roseanne, asking where her knight is, and mocking her for not having secured one yet. She declares that without a knight, Roseanne automatically loses, but is interrupted by a voice apologizing for being late. The pink-haired woman and her companions gasp in shock as a hand comes to rest on Roseanne's shoulder. Roseanne turns to face the newcomer with a supremely confident smile. Grand Duke Barpheus makes his grand entrance, stunning the opposing party as he stands ready to fight. The military man stammers in disbelief, asking why his grace is there. Barthas stands protectively beside a composed Roseanne. The pink-haired woman demands to know why he's meddling, but Barpheus silences her with a chilling, red-eyed glare, asking if he must explain himself. Panicking, she realizes her reputation is on the line, knowing that if her knight, Sir Mark, loses, she will be utterly humiliated. She thinks furiously about how unfair the situation is, especially after she had praised Sir Mark's strength so highly. The pink-haired woman stares ahead, her face a mask of pure frustration and rage. She objects loudly, pointing out that Barpheus is royalty and only knights are allowed to participate in a duel. In a cute chibi outburst, the pink-haired woman exclaims that the entire situation is absurd. Roseanne counters coolly, reminding the Portland heiress that the Archduke is the Emperor's sworn knight, and questioning if she intends to defy the Emperor's will, which she nervously denies. Roseanne presses the issue, asking if they will fight or debate, while Barpheus dryly remarks that a debate wouldn't require a knight. The Portland heiress reluctantly agrees to proceed with the duel as a flag waves, signaling the start of the event. At the dueling grounds, Sir Mark tells Roseanne she might as well cheer for him, while Barpheus watches with a stern expression. Drawing his sword, Sir Mark declares it an honor to face the Grand Duke, but vows not to underestimate him. Barthas simply cracks his knuckles, looking completely unfazed by the challenge. Sir Mark lunges forward, swinging his sword directly at Barpheus. To Sir Mark's astonishment, Barpheus effortlessly blocks the blow with his sword still in its scabbard. Announcing it's his turn, Barpheus strikes back with his sheathed sword, making his opponent cry out in pain. Barthas holds his sheathed sword aloft over the cowering Sir Mark, asking if he is ready now. A flash of intense power emanates from Barpheus as his red eyes glow and Sir Mark recoils in terror. With a single, decisive strike, Barpheus sends Sir Mark flying, knocking him unconscious upon impact with the ground. Bartholomew turns away from his defeated foe and calmly instructs the Sub-Viscount to declare the winner, who quickly agrees. As the crowd offers half-hearted congratulations, Barpheus listens with a stoic expression. The pink-haired woman slams her fist down in a rage, utterly shocked that Sir Mark was defeated so easily. She stares in stunned silence as Roseanne nonchalantly sips her drink nearby, feigning ignorance. While the Portland heiress seethes, Roseanne happily considers dueling as a new career path, as her maid celebrates their easy victory. Glaring at a smiling Roseanne, the pink-haired woman internally fumes. I despise her. The scene transitions to a beautiful shot of a castle under the light of a full moon. A massive pile of glittering gold coins fills the frame, representing Roseanne's winnings. Back in her room, Roseanne admires her prize as her maid congratulates her, musing that life truly is one big gamble. Holding a handful of coins, Roseanne smiles, thinking this money is her key to breaking the seal and finally living freely. Her maid, concerned about rumors binding Roseanne and the Duke in marriage, asks if it bothers her, but Roseanne casually dismisses the notion. Roseanne gets her maid's attention by calling her name River, who responds with a start. Thinking Roseanne is referring to her payment, River shyly admits that the bonus she received might have been excessive. Roseanne clarifies that she wasn't talking about the bonus, but about the library key she had given her. When Roseanne asks if she looks petty enough to take back a gift, River beams and emphatically says, "Never." River happily produces the golden key, explaining she kept it safe and asking if Roseanne plans to visit the library tomorrow. Roseanne takes the key and confirms her plans, prompting an excited River to promise she'll prepare everything for the visit. Roseanne kindly tells River to rest after a hard day's work, and the grateful maid wishes her lady a good rest as well. Roseanne decides she'll take a short rest before heading out to the library herself. Later, carrying a lantern, Roseanne walks alone down a dark, echoing hallway. She arrives at a pair of grand, ornate doors, recognizing it as her destination. Finding no one around, she uses the golden key to unlock the library door. Standing in the magnificent library, Roseanne prepares to finally uncover the truth about the dragon-slaying expedition. The narrator explains Roseanne's secret visit is to research the Empire's histories without leaving a record. After a long night of copying texts about heroes and wars, Roseanne stretches, her shoulders aching from the effort. She knows that if the Imperial family suspects she's a hero, these historical records could become dangerous clues. The books she reads only detail the Emperor's glorious victories, which are portrayed as blessings from the gods. She flips through the records, finding no mention of the mad dragon subjugation she participated in. Dejected, she sits at the desk, realizing there might be no record of her deeds at all. Her frustration turns to anger at the thought of erasing the knights who fought, but her thoughts are cut short as her glowing eyes detect a sudden presence. Alert, she rises, sensing a strange presence that is neither the Duke nor her maid, River. Realizing the rumors about the mansion must be true, she thinks she has finally found the spy she's been looking for. As a dark figure lunges at her, her eyes glow with power, and she throws up a hand to defend herself. With a surge of force, she violently repels her attacker, sending him flying backward. The intruder crashes to the ground as Roseanne swiftly moves to pin him down. Demanding answers, she asks who sent him, but the man only chokes and gurgles. With an icy glare, she commands him to stop playing games and speak clearly. She begins to choke the spy, determined to learn who he is working for. Analyzing his calloused hands and undisguised voice, she realizes he's a weak decoy and coldly wonders if he'll talk before he dies. The spy continues to struggle, unable to speak as he chokes. She finds the spy's loud struggling annoying, wondering if he's an amateur or making noise on purpose. Deciding she needs light to see his face, she releases him, planning to knock him out momentarily. To her surprise, the man scrambles to his feet and pushes past her in a desperate escape attempt. She watches him flee down the hall, momentarily stunned by his sudden escape. Catching her breath, she muses that for a sloppy spy, he runs well, blaming her own body for being too light to stop him. She decides not to give chase, confident the guards will catch him and the strangulation marks will make him easy to identify. With a menacing smirk, she vows to see the spy again tomorrow. The next day, Roseanne is enjoying her tea when her maid River approaches her table. River introduces a man wearing a large scarf, but Roseanne begins to dismiss them, saying she's busy. She trails off, staring at the man in wide-eyed shock. The man nervously introduces himself as Henry Austin, his voice hoarse, which Roseanne recognizes as the sound of someone who was recently strangled. As Henry fidgets with his scarf, Roseanne stares intently, thinking it couldn't possibly be him. River explains that Henry, the Duke's former aide, was transferred to the library due to health issues. Henry explains he came to personally guide her on her first visit since she received the library keys. River excitedly tells Roseanne how wonderful this is, while Roseanne internally despairs at her maid's cluelessness. Roseanne realizes this is a perfect opportunity, since the spy she was planning to find has come directly to her. Her eyes narrow on his scarf, thinking that if she can just get that suspicious muffler off, she'll have her proof. Roseanne agrees to the tour, and Henry dismisses River to fetch them some refreshments. River unthanks Henry, mentioning she heard he was organizing books late last night. He vaguely recalls a commotion, blaming it on a wild animal. Roseanne sternly tells River to stop chattering and go, and the maid quickly apologizes and agrees. As River leaves to prepare snacks, Roseanne watches her go, eager to be alone with her suspect. The moment they are alone, Roseanne swiftly reaches out and yanks the scarf from Henry's neck. Now properly introduced, Henry gestures for Roseanne to follow him to the library. Walking behind him, Roseanne finds him confusing, especially noting how well his scarf had been tied. As they head to the library, Henry explains the current book arrangement and offers to recategorize them to her liking. She begins to doubt her suspicions, wondering if he was really just a librarian working late. A wave of horror washes over her as she realizes she might have strangled an ordinary man and the Duke's former aide, no less. Arriving at the library, Henry informs her of the set usage times as he opens the grand doors. Roseanne considers the innocent possibility that the man simply has a cold, but knows she must get his muffler off to be sure. She cryptically warns him to be careful in the mansion at night, suggesting someone might suddenly attack or even strangle him. Henry thanks her for the advice, and his reaction confirms Roseanne's suspicion with a smirk. It's definitely him. Why? The man suddenly recoils in terror asking why she's being so sudden, much to Roseanne's confusion. He shudders, recalling bad memories of the floor, and Roseanne points to the exact spot where he lay defeated, now questioning if he's not a spy after all. As they walk, she inwardly questions his excuse for transferring to the library for health reasons. She finds his story suspicious, wondering why a spy would give up a high-information position as an aide for a menial library job. Henry explains that after his father's death, he became the Duke's aide, but his ability alone didn't guarantee success. Roseanne notes he's quite young to be an aide, but Henry, carrying books, replies that age is irrelevant for the role. She's taken aback, realizing he's gathered all the books she read yesterday and wondering how he could possibly know. Convinced the odds are too slim for coincidence, she decides she must check under his muffler and deal with him now, while they're alone. As Henry shelves a book, asking what she's doing, Roseanne reaches for his scarf from behind with a grab. With a bright, cheerful smile, she successfully yanks the scarf away. Henry screams, recognizing her as the one who strangled him last night, and hurls a book at her as Roseanne wonders why everyone throws things at her. A loud thud echoes through the library, as the book presumably makes impact. With a triumphant grin, Henry declares, "Got you," having ensnared Roseanne in his now unfurled scarf. He glares at her, calling her a sloppy spy, while she looks back with a confident, knowing smirk. In a swift reversal, Roseanne grabs the collar of the now choking Henry, who insists he's not a spy, as she demands to know why he threw a book. Henry frantically points toward a bookshelf, trying to explain about the book, while Roseanne asks what he's trying to show her. She scolds him for not explaining sooner, stating his sudden book throwing and previous escape made him seem like a spy. He just coughs in response. Clutching his throat, Henry explains he only threw the book because her vicious glare made him feel threatened. Roseanne questioned his strange methods, asking why he made testing remarks and took out all the books she had already shelved. He admits he was testing her because he wasn't certain, challenging her about what she would have done if he had been her attacker. Overcome with emotion, Henry grabs his collar and declares that after what she's done to him, she must take responsibility. Their confrontation is interrupted by the sound of a broom clattering onto the polished floor. A flustered staff member stumbles upon them, apologizing profusely for interrupting what he mistakenly believes to be a lover's quarrel. Mortified by his misunderstanding, the staff member quickly flees the scene, leaving Roseanne and Henry in an awkward silence. Panicked that rumors will spread, Henry yells that he has to catch the man and explain the situation. Roseanne grabs his collar, calmly telling him to let it go, but he frets that rumors of an improper relationship will ruin him. She looks at him coolly and asks if he dislikes the idea, leaving him utterly confused. With a faint, knowing smile, she clarifies her question. Those kinds of rumors. She scoffs internally, confident that no one would dare spread rumors after feeling her overwhelming, inhuman aura. She then teases him that his feeble legs wouldn't let him catch the man anyway, prompting his indignant defense of his leg strength. Dismissing the interruption as unimportant, she tells him not to worry about it as they walk further into the library. Gesturing toward a chair, she indicates that it's time for them to finally have a proper conversation. The scene shifts to a beautifully arranged table laden with tea, macarons, and a fresh berry tart. As they sit, Roseanne tells him to relax, and he prompts her to finally share the story she intended to tell. Remembering her purpose, Roseanne gets straight to the point, asking if he has told the Duke or anyone else about the previous night. Henry passionately swears on his family's honor that he has kept silent, an answer Roseanne quietly considers. He internally puzzles over how to handle her, realizing that, unlike knights or merchants, she can't be swayed by force or money. Her eyes glow with a chilling light as she contemplates killing him, a thought so palpable that he asks if she's planning to do it right now. Casually eating a macaron, she admits he's perceptive, causing him to blush and complain that her murderous intent was far too obvious. He exasperatedly promises not to reveal her secret, even though he doesn't understand why she has one. With a determined expression, he firmly states that he refuses to entrust his life to her unpredictable whims. He then makes a surprising offer, to serve her directly, arguing it would give him no reason to betray her, which makes her pause and think. She flatly refuses his offer, stunning him into asking why she would possibly dislike the idea. Roseanne thinks to herself that keeping him close isn't a risk, but rather an opportunity to gain more weaknesses to hold over him. A painful memory surfaces, reminding her how hollow and fragile relationships built on one-sided exploitation truly are. What if it's not one-sided exploitation? He declares that she is the only person in the entire empire who can give him the reward he truly seeks, and she calmly invites him to name it. He explains that his true desire is to restore the honor of his family, which ended with his generation, leaving Roseanne to question his motive. He stands before a grand ancestral portrait, clarifying that his family, the Austins, served the Leylaton house for generations until the line was cut off with him. Clenching his fist, he admits that returning to serve the Duke proved difficult, and being hired by the Leylaton family would be a great help. He declares his ambition to restore the honor of the Aston family by, once again, serving the Leylaton family up close. Henry stares forward with unwavering determination, his goal clearly set. Roseanne looks away dismissively, coolly informing him that she doesn't need him. He insists he can run errands well, but she counters that River already handles them, leaving him flustered. Slamming his hands on the table, he reminds her that he knows her secret and boldly asks if she'd prefer to have him killed on the spot. He challenges her with a smirk, questioning how she would deal with the aftermath of his death, since people would notice his absence. He confidently states that she isn't the type to kill an innocent person and sleep soundly, a fact she silently acknowledges is true. Striking a confident pose, he boasts that he is smart, meticulous, and sturdy, clearly proud of his own merits. Roseanne thoughtfully considers his actions, acknowledging his skill in placing the book and his guts for being so bold in the face of death. She tests his loyalty, asking if he would still serve her, even if the Duke had other children. He calmly closes his eyes and says, "Of course not," prompting Roseanne to ask why. Henry explains that her hidden power and desire for secrecy prove she has no intention of catching the Duke's eye. Roseanne presses him further, questioning if he is only serving her because she's the sole heir and why he didn't appear sooner. He explains that the Leylaton house could become a puppet of the court with a weak leader, but after seeing her, he's convinced she will conquer, not be conquered, impressing her with his insight. A faint smile plays on her lips as she acknowledges that he truly understands the nature of the Leylaton family. With her decision made, she warns him to keep her secret well, because if it ever leaks, he will be the one she blames. She dismisses him, stating she'll have the Duke find a new clerk, which sends him into a panic. She looks at him intently, reminding him to hold on to his ambition to restore his family's honor and the resolve he just showed to serve her. Bowing deeply, Henry swears that he will follow her to the very end. He silently considers that if there were other heir candidates and his life wasn't tied to hers, he concludes that while he wouldn't have served her without knowing her secret, now that he does, he would have chosen her over any number of other heirs. His dedication is absolute as he envisions her seated on a magnificent golden throne, believing she will become the pinnacle of the empire. Pulled back to reality, Roseanne eyes his adoring expression and bluntly asks why he's smiling so lecherously. She changes the subject, ordering him to bring someone to her and to take Knights with him for assistance. As she leans over the table toward a confused Henry, she reminds him that he had said this was fine earlier. She explains that they nearly killed the person by mistake due to a peculiar presence, causing Henry to shout an alarm. He immediately promises to go, and as he rushes off, she tells him to use her name with the captain of the Knights if they prove uncooperative. Alone again, she reaches for a tart while pondering who might be behind the spy, a rival house or someone who lost a fortune on the duel. As she takes a thoughtful bite of the pastry, she murmurs, "Well..." A satisfied smile graces her lips as she licks her finger, commenting that the tart tastes good. The scene shifts to a sunny garden, where Roseanne enjoys another dessert with her eyes closed, murmuring how delicious it is. As she sits with her maids, she remarks that she can still eat more, and one explains that the chef has been working hard on new desserts. She hands a delicate bracelet to a maid as a token of appreciation for the chef's hard work and delicious creations. The maid accepts the gift as Roseanne jokingly warns her not to sneak any desserts and then asks for another plate of pancakes. Her peaceful moment is interrupted as she looks up, sensing something amiss. A maid smiles cheerfully as she holds a parasol to shade Roseanne from the sun. Another maid begins fanning her, offering to keep her cool while she finishes eating. A maid presents a new dish, and Roseanne praises her, instructing that the chef should focus on research rather than greetings. The maids eagerly present a new pancake with fresh berries, and Roseanne says she can't wait to taste it. One maid expresses concern, explaining that even the Duke has stepped in, and urges Roseanne to go inside to safety. As her maids look on with worry, Roseanne calmly agrees while continuing to enjoy her dessert. She reflects with annoyance that it's taking too long to catch a single spy, and her eyes flash with a cold, determined light. She sighs, complaining that trouble always interrupts her meals, just as a maid approaches her. Kaya. With a sudden movement, Roseanne sends her plate flying, claiming her hand slipped. Gasp! Two nearby maids stare in wide-eyed shock at the sudden commotion. Her maids frantically urge her to go inside for safety, but Roseanne remains seated, calmly reassuring them that the knights are on their way. As her maids wonder where the knights are, Roseanne calmly reassures them that they have just arrived. Just as she says, a group of knights comes running into the garden, much to the maid's surprise. When a maid informs her of a spy in the residence, Roseanne nonchalantly points, identifying the intruder's location. The knight captain looks shocked, but when Roseanne asks if he has a problem, he quickly denies it. The knights find the spy hiding behind a tree, and the captain orders a report to be sent to the Duke. Led by the knights, the Duke arrives with his men, commenting that they have finally caught the arrogant scoundrel. A knight nervously reports to the Duke that while the spy has been caught, there is a problem. The Duke firmly grabs the knight's shoulder, demanding that he explain the problem clearly. The knight reveals the bizarre situation. The spy's hand is impaled by a table knife, and they cannot pull it out. The Duke expresses his disbelief that they are being held up by a single knife, while the impaled spy cries out in pain. Looking around the scene, the Duke angrily demands to know who is responsible for the strange situation. His eyes land on Roseanne sitting peacefully nearby, and he begins to suspect her involvement. Roseanne turns to face the group, pointedly asking if they have something to ask her. The Duke calls out her name, alarmed that she is so close to the dangerous situation. She calmly approaches the bewildered men, who can only stare in confusion. Roseanne claims the knife flew off while she was cutting a pancake, an excuse the man next to her finds absurd until he recalls her terrifying strength. He remembers that her previous actions were also disguised as accidents, connecting her carelessness to the spy's current predicament. Looking at the Duke, Roseanne permits him to try removing the knife, but warns that it's lodged deeply by chance. Tossing the knife aside, Roseanne begins to walk away, prompting the Duke to ask what she plans to do. Kaya! The spy screams as Roseanne grabs his injured hand, pinning him firmly against the tree. She declares they should just interrogate the spy as he is, chiding the men for standing idly by while he cries in pain. After the Duke's threat to kill him is met with defiance, Roseanne steps forward and tells her father to move aside. The Duke questions her actions, but she coolly asks what he means by kill. She explains that death would be a mercy for a man already risking his life, which visibly unnerves the spy. Kaya! The terrified spy recoils from her touch, shouting that she is a demon. Unfazed, Roseanne accepts the title and begins to describe his gruesome interrogation, starting with him enduring his current state until morning. With a chilling smile, she adds that no one will watch him, as he won't be able to run away anyway. She continues her threat, detailing how they will hang him by his other hand and then alternate with his legs. As the spy calls her wicked, the surrounding men quietly agree that this is standard treatment for a spy. Leaning in close, Roseanne gives him one last chance to answer her question. Who sent you? Breaking under the pressure, the terrified spy begs for some time to think. Roseanne coldly refuses, ordering everyone to disperse and instructing a knight to switch the spy's hand the next day. As she turns to leave, the spy desperately stops her, shouting that he has something to say about his employer. He frantically confesses that he was sent by the Mage Tower. Roseanne freezes, her expression hardening at the mention of the Mage Tower. She recalls her painful past, remembering that mages sealed her and could sense her identity, making them her most dangerous enemy. Later that night, Roseanne reflects on her attempts to avoid mages, lamenting that they have found her anyway. She ponders whether the Mage Tower suspected her specifically, or has been watching the Leylaton family all along. With a serious expression, she realizes that either possibility means her future actions will be severely restricted. Feeling frustrated, she thinks about wanting a drink, but notes that the one she'd share it with isn't there. A soft, wistful smile appears on her face as she gazes out her window. She remembers a promise made long ago with her companions to drink together, sadly wondering if that promise can ever be fulfilled. The next day, her new aide, River, stands ready in the garden, pledging to make everything perfect for her. River offers to help feed the fish, but Roseanne tells him there's no need, as it's her personal hobby. Roseanne greets River, noting his early arrival, and he credits her for speaking with the Duke on his behalf. River comments on the Duke's high regard for her, believing he would have been hired as the Duke's aide otherwise. Reaffirming his commitment to her, River asks if he may begin his report right away. Roseanne turns and calls out the name River, and a dark-haired maid promptly responds. Impressed with her staff's performance, Roseanne dismisses them, deciding it's time to get down to business. Alone with her aide, she thinks to herself that it's time to see how well her new honor pouch performs. The spy is identified as Gary, a low-level mage from the Magic Tower who has been with the family for 13 years. Her aide confirms that according to official records, Gary did indeed pass the required test to be hired. River relays the knight's theory that the spy's low mana went undetected, but Roseanne slyly suggests she thinks otherwise, piquing his curiosity. Startled by her implication, River snaps his clipboard shut. She smiles faintly, commenting cryptically that such behavior is typical for mages. In a cute aside, River anxiously asks if this means he passed her test, to which she gives a vague reply. His thoughts drift to the Duke's actions before he has a sudden realization. River corrects himself, realizing she just calls her father the Duke, and privately notes her detached way of speaking. River reports that, for now, the Duke is investigating all household staff who were close to the spy, Gary. He continues, explaining that a letter demanding an explanation was sent to the Magic Tower, but they have yet to reply. She internally concludes that a spy sent 13 years ago is the Duke's problem, not hers, and decides to let him handle it. She believes this is a necessary test for her father, musing that it's the only way he will grow. Shifting topics, she asks about the Tower Master, and River identifies him as a man named Ilian. River elaborates that Ilian is a mysterious shapeshifter whose true form is unknown, and he is considered one of the greatest magical geniuses. The report concludes that his ability to constantly maintain a transformation implies immense power, and Roseanne realizes they must be extremely cautious around him. When River offers to investigate Ilian further, she declines, firmly stating that it is the Duke's responsibility. Their discussion is suddenly interrupted by a servant rushing over to announce the arrival of a visitor. Assuming it's the Grand Duke, Roseanne oddly instructs the servant to have him wait at the front gate instead of the drawing room. She clarifies that she will go to the gate herself, and the servant respectfully acknowledges her command. River offers to call for a carriage, confused when she asks why, as she just said she was going to the gate. Surrounded by question marks, she dismisses the idea of a carriage, claiming the gate is just ahead, leaving River bewildered. "River, let's go," she says, prompting her maids to scramble into formation, declaring they are ready to depart. With a determined look, Roseanne begins her walk, followed closely by River and her surprisingly menacing-looking maids. As time passes under the hot sun, a weary sigh escapes. Outside the grand golden gates, the waiting visitors grow restless, one wondering if this treatment is excessive. His companions complain about being left to wait in the sweltering heat, speculating that this rudeness is a dismissal. The Grand Duke silences his men, reminding them not to speak disrespectfully at another's home, and they quietly obey. Internally, however, he admits he's suffering the most, feeling his mana strained to a breaking point from the prolonged wait. He desperately tries to suppress his power, worrying that if she changes her mind, he will be forced to rely on magic tools once more. A strange sound catches his attention, and he wonders what it could be, as they are nowhere near the training grounds. As the grand gates swing open, he recognizes the approaching voice. Striding through the gates, Roseanne finally appears, causing him to question if it's really her. He watches silently as she gracefully closes the distance between them. She offers a weak apology, claiming she needed a rest, while one of her exhausted maids thinks that her lady is far from weak. He asks in disbelief if she walked the entire way, and she calmly replies she was just taking a short stroll. Oh. She internally marvels that ordinary people find such a short walk to be so exhausting. He presses, asking if she's truly all right, but she simply looks up at him and says it can't be helped. Thinking she might have overdone it, Roseanne feigns fainting and collapses into his arms as her maids cry out in alarm. He catches her and holds her close, a soft sigh escaping his lips as they share an intimate moment. He gazes down at her, thinking that her mere touch is enough to cleanse his frayed mind and bring him peace. "I'm fine now, Grand Duke," she says, claiming the pain is gone, prompting him to apologize for holding her. She insists it was her fault, blaming her weak legs, as her own staff quietly observes how bad she is at acting. As she approaches with the Grand Duke, his men whisper that noble ladies only walk to the gate if their family is ruined. He turns to her and gently asks, "Or shall we take mine together?" She agrees to ride with him, but declares she isn't returning to the estate, leaving him utterly confused. Flustered, he asks for clarification, his mind jumping to the hopeful conclusion that she's asking him on a date Her expression remains serious and unreadable. She internally reminds herself that she'd almost forgotten their pretense of being lovers, which allows them to meet frequently. He glances at her, admitting to himself that he had assumed this was just another pretense for a serious discussion. Roseanne and the Grand Duke embark on a romantic boat ride across a sparkling lake. Watching from a distance, the Grand Duke's aide marvels that they've come to an actual date spot. The Grand Duke blushes, thinking Roseanne is impossible to predict and that this pretense is a bit excessive. As they stand together, Roseanne playfully asks the Grand Duke why he is so stiff. He looks away as she teases him about having aquaphobia, causing him to inwardly question if he's afraid of water. Roseanne privately muses that it would be more amusing to ask if the water was afraid of her. He apologizes for choosing the wrong place and takes her hand, but she offers to walk instead if he's scared. Holding her hand firmly, the Grand Duke declares that there is nothing in this world that he fears. Surprising her, his eyes glow red as he grips her hand with intense resolve. She agrees and insists they take the rowboat, pointing out that she thought he didn't want to ride it. Flustered, the Grand Duke quickly tries to explain that she misunderstood him. They approach a dock, and Roseanne asks a man if they can borrow a boat. He offers to provide an oarsman. In a devious thought, Roseanne imagines trapping the Grand Duke on the water to get answers, then tells the man she can row herself. As the boatman questions his safety, the Grand Duke pays him, brushing off the concern as no big deal. He confidently steps into the small wooden boat. Extending a hand to help her, he begins to say that if she can't believe him, then he will have to show her, gallantly helping her aboard. Gazing at her eyes, he realizes he'd forgotten their true blue color, having only ever seen them stained with blood. As they glide across the lake, Roseanne trails her hand through the cool, clear water. Watching her, the Grand Duke thinks to himself that she is beautiful. She turns and asks if he's having fun, leaving him momentarily speechless. A gentle, radiant smile graces her face as she enjoys the moment. Whoosh! The Grand Duke rows with surprising speed, and a stunned Roseanne asks if this was his doing. He calmly takes credit, confirming that it's true. She asks how he learned to row, assuming his subordinates usually handle such tasks. Holding a parasol over her, he explains he practiced as a child in case he was ever marooned on a deserted island. Roseanne realizes with a serious expression that he is talking about the Emperor. He nervously warns her to be careful, but she nonchalantly asks what's wrong with calling the Emperor by his title. In a cute chibi aside, he explains that one should add, "Your Majesty," but she retorts that it doesn't matter since he isn't there. The Grand Duke lists the benefits he receives from their arrangement, wondering if he's the only one gaining anything. She agrees that's true, if viewed simply, prompting him to question her meaning. With a cold look, she reveals her hatred for the Emperor, who uses her family like disposable puppets, a sentiment the Grand Duke finds difficult to comprehend. A sly smile appears on her face as she ponders how the Emperor might feel if his ever-loyal dog began consorting with an enemy, concluding it would surely upset him. She admits that simply imagining his displeasure helps her sleep well at night. Her words trigger a forgotten memory in him, a feeling of bottomless rage, fear, and awe. He questions what would happen if the Emperor abandoned her family, but she coolly dismisses the idea, stating, "The Emperor lacks the courage." The atmosphere grows tense between them on the sunlit water. Looking at her with newfound intensity, the Grand Duke tells her to never let go, even if it makes him uncomfortable. She invites his questions, explaining she's been studying the Empire's history. She reveals her curiosity about an event from 10 years prior, the Mad Dragon subjugation party he was part of. As she asks what caused the party's demise, his eyes flare red with a traumatic memory, and he begins to speak. A sudden flash of light interrupts him, catching him by surprise. With glowing blue eyes, Roseanne calmly suggests he use a parasol, and he thanks her, realizing she just helped him avert a disaster. He realizes he missed the killing intent while lost in the story, just as 3 boats carrying 6 assassins appear on the water. He calls her name softly, placing a protective hand on her shoulder. Pulling her into his arms, he shields her from the approaching threat as she looks up, confused. He tells her that this experience must be a first for her. Holding her close to shield her from the sight, he tells her she must have forgotten the smell of blood as he swiftly and brutally dispatches an assassin. As the Grand Duke holds Roseanne close, he somberly thinks that today might be the last day. The thought of it being the last day echoes as the view focuses on Roseanne's neck and necklace. In a dark and thorny vision, the Grand Duke's thoughts twist, wishing he could just call out to her. Snapping him out of his daze, Roseanne calls his name, causing the flustered Grand Duke to blush. Roseanne observes him, noting he's lost in thought again, while he internally panics over his distraction, wondering if he's being consumed by her. The force of her push sends him stumbling backward in surprise. With a splash, they both fall back into the boat they were riding in. Lying beside him, Roseanne calmly explains that she fell because the boat rocked. Seeing a fresh hole in the parasol, the Grand Duke mentally tells himself to get a grip. He holds her close, seriously explaining that assassins must have followed him here. A bloody, swirling energy appears as he thinks that this danger is routine for him. He warns her that it's dangerous to be with him, and asks if this is an urgent situation, to which she nervously agrees. He leans over her protectively, his hand gently touching her face. He looks down at her, surprised, as he had expected her to be scared by his warning. Looking up at him, Roseanne admits she is scared but declares that she will trust him. He stands confidently at the boat's prow, promising to handle the threat, while she waves him on, thinking they'll be safe soon. An attack deflects off a barrier before the Grand Duke brutally cuts down an assassin, who lets out a scream. Roseanne senses a change in him, while he slaughters his enemies, feeling a faint sense of pleasure in the fight. His eyes glow as a dragon's eye appears behind him, revealing his identity as the mad dragon who has survived countless assassination attempts. Watching him, Roseanne worries that if she doesn't intervene, he might go completely berserk like a lizard mad with slaughter. An assassin suddenly appears behind her in the boat, holding a blade and warning her not to scream. He clamps a hand over her mouth and holds a knife to her throat, ordering her to cooperate. With her eyes glowing ominously, Roseanne thinks that her attackers have made a foolish choice by not leaving her alone,